Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Community Question Time. Our subject matter today that we're going to be discussing with our esteemed panel is the school exclusions to criminality pipeline. Some of our panelists are traveling from deep West London and North London, so you know what Friday traffic is like, right? So they're a little caught up, but when they do arrive, they'll just come and join us. But we are joined today by Brother Jeffrey Mohammed, who is a solicitor and community activist, and he is one of the head representatives of our local community Ministry of Justice and one of our hosts of this event tonight. And beside me, I have Brother Trevor Hakim, who has so many titles, but just in the interest of time, he's an educator and youth intervention master, really, and he does a lot of youth engagement work, and he's a specialist in activism and has worked practically all over this country and helped our young people into the tens of thousands. Beside Brother, I have Brother Ryan Robotham, and again, he has worked with our young people and helped them in amazing ways, and he will tell you more about some of the work he does as the evening goes on. How is everybody? Fine, sir. You look like Friday evening. But I want you to look like Friday morning. So we're going to have a very, God willing, interactive evening this evening. And you've probably been to quite a few community events where we've discussed the obvious and gone over and over with things that are really perplexing our community. Today, I want to approach this issue a bit different. I want the panelists to start their comments by giving you their solutions to the problem. So if we start with solutions, then we can refine these solutions and hopefully leave with a program. Yeah? What do you think? Yeah? Because I just don't want to go back and forth. We're here for solutions, right? And we're here to leave with a program, right? Because we've had so many events, people get very emotional and, leave the same way, very hot and frustrated because that is taking place in our community. It's very troubling to us all, I would imagine. Yeah? Yes. And that's the reason why you're here, because this is very troubling. And tonight, we want to look at whether what is taking place in our community is just a result of bad parenting and bad family interaction, or is it a conspiracy from the highest seats of government? And once we can answer that question, then we can be properly directed in going forward. Yeah? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to Brother Ryan, if you don't mind, to start us off with what he sees as viable solutions for this problem that we find ourselves being faced with. Brother Ryan, please, before they start, give our panelists a big round of applause. Welcome them. So, Brother Ryan.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Turn your mic on. Just press that red button for me.
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Okay. My name is Ryan Robotham. I'm a youth offending service officer. So, as the brothers just mentioned, I work with a lot of young people, and I have been doing it for the last few years. Here are just some of the solutions that I think we could have as, say, a community in regards to, say, school exclusion. So one of the things that I've noticed a lot of is just that there are three types of learners in this world. There are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, which is basically you work with your hands. The school curriculum at this moment in time is geared towards visual learners and auditory learners. It isn't geared towards kinesthetic learners whatsoever. So what you often find is that you have these young men, these young women who aren't that good or don't work that effectively in a visual environment, an auditory environment. So what tends to happen is they're seen as misbehaving. Once they're seen as misbehaving, they're then shipped out to what we call pupil referral units. Another issue that you have is that when it comes to pupil referral units, sorry, I do apologize. When you have pupil referral units, they do not adhere to the same rules as mainstream schools. So, for example, at a mainstream school, you need 95% attendance. At a PRU, turn up when you want. One of my local PRUs, as long as the child is there before midday, it's okay, which is an absolute joke. The school's supposed to start at 9. That's an absolute, sorry.
Can we, brothers and sisters, please put all phones on vibrate or turn them off altogether? Yeah? Please proceed.
Another issue that we have is that a lot of schools, if not all of them, focus on the young people that are going to do well. So when it comes time to GCSE, years 10 and years 11, those that aren't going to do well tend to be shipped out as the year goes on. So instead of having, say, maybe 100, 200 young people going for GCSEs, now we only have 50. It makes the school stats look a lot better. But as I say to the young people a lot of the time, if you take the 150 people or the 150 young people that aren't going to do well, they don't care about you. You're no longer part of the stats. It's only the 50 that are going to do well. And my final point, I think what needs to happen is that parents need to be more aware of the school system and how young people are excluded. In the borough that I work in, I remember a few years ago, we were told that too many young people were being excluded illegally, but nothing was being done about it because a lot of the parents didn't know what was going on. As far as they were concerned, once they were told that the young person, the young man, the young lady had to leave, they had to leave. It was only afterwards that they realized, oh, okay, he or she has been excluded incorrectly. But by that time, they're already in a pupil referral unit. And by that time, they've basically adapted to the new environment. When I speak to a lot of young people who are currently in PRUs, they don't want to go back to mainstream schools because they don't think that they'll be able to adjust. Sorry, I do apologize. They don't think they'll be able to adjust. They don't think they'll be able to learn. I was working with a young lady a couple of months back, and she actually said to me she'd rather stay in the PRU because she understood it and they understood her, which I thought was really sad. She was only in year 9. So those are my solutions.
Thank you, Brother Ryan. Brother Hakeem.
Good evening, peace, everybody. You're all being excluded, man. Give me some vibe. You okay? Good evening. Right, solutions. The first point I think that we must start at is parent responsibility. It has to start within the home. So when we choose or we become parents, we must, and I'm emphasizing must, it's compulsory, that we've got to create and establish developmental structures within our homes that consist of it being spiritual, because we are spiritual people, right? Yes, sir. Because I don't know any society or nation in our places of origin where we come from, within our history, that we come from a secular or atheist nation. Doesn't exist within our culture. So that means we need to reclaim our spiritual strength, because we are facing a spiritual war as well as an economic and all other social ills, which I'm hoping we'll get into a bit more later on. Also, it's got to consist of intellectual, physical, emotional, and a cultural foundation of achievement and mastery. You know, we've got to be able to raise our young people in an environment that shows them mastery. Not just shows how to get a paycheck, not just shows them how to go through an interview or do a CV, but we need to show them how to master their very environment. Look, Boris Johnson, Prince Charles, Prince William, what have they all got in common?
Eton College.
There you go. But you shouldn't have answered that.
Oh, right. Sorry. Pardon me. Pardon me.
And in Eton, it's not like any other comprehension that we have gone to. You're taught how to master society. You're taught how to come out being a god in and of effect of the society you are now going to go into. We can do that in our homes. How many of us in here have children? Show of hands, please. How many of them have smartphones? Show of hands. Or have you got nephews, cousins, nieces? Now, I know there should be more hands going up. Come on now. Now, how many of your young people actually have apps on their phones that teach them knowledge? too. See, we're dealing with smartphones, but we're dealing with them in dumb ways. You know, there's got to be mastery that's developed within our homes. Also, we've got to understand that there is a science to parenting. And we've got to get back into that science. Parenting doesn't just happen by accident, even though people say you can get accidentally pregnant. You need to become a parent. You need to become a parent before you even become a biological father or mother. Do you understand what I mean by that? Am I throwing anybody off?
Explain.
To be a parent, first and foremost, means responsibility. And when you look at the word responsibility or responsible, you're looking at two words, respond and able, meaning that you have the capacity and ability to act correctly to any given situation. That's what you need to be instilling within yourself, and the basis for you to do that is through knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So you can't be a man or a woman without knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. You can't be a mother or a father. Hence, that's the reason why when knowledge is established, someone is now known as the father of science, correct? The father of mechanics, yes? The mother language, the mother, you understand where I'm going with this? See, these are titles of mastery and achievement. So you need to become a parent even before you become a biological father or mother. Everyone with me so far? Right, okay. Whichever school you choose to put your young person in. Remember, you're choosing this, which means you're the client. And I know many of you may have gone into schools and you feel like a teacher or a head teacher, a senior member of staff is treating you like they're doing you a favor. Remember, you're keeping them in employment. They work for you on your behalf. How many days are there in a year? 365. And you're putting your child in an environment where they're in that environment for 190 days out of the 365. That means they're only with you fully for 175, if I've got the math right, for the rest of the year. And they're in that environment for an average of 7 hours for 190 days. You know, I was in a discussion with someone the other day when they was talking about, but would you let your child be with Michael Jackson? Would you let your child sleep with... And I'm like, well, hold on. You let your child be with strangers for 190 days of the year for 7 hours on average, and you don't even know what they're doing to your child. Mentally and spiritually. Does this make sense? So you've got to be more proactive with the school that you are choosing to send your young people to. You've got to be more proactive. You've got to know who are the senior members of staff that deal with your students' welfare. You've got to know who the parent governors. You've got to know what is the population or the demographics of black students of that school before you put your child in there. And how do they achieve? How many of them have been excluded before, excuse me, you put your child in there? Before you put your child in there, even go and spend a day there, a working school day. See how they operate. You know you're allowed to do that, right? You can book an appointment and go into that school before your child goes there, while they're running it on a normal school day. Ask to see the school handbook. How do they deal with behavior policy, safeguarding policy, welfare policy? Does it make sense? But how many of us do that? See, every hand should be going up of every adult. Right. Now here's another one. You ready for this word? I'm going to have to swear now.
Please don't.
I'm going to have to use the C word, sir.
Please don't.
Commitment. We need a better level of commitment with our community. Those people that are proactive and working on our behalf in our community. Those individuals and those organizations that actually sacrifice time, effort, money, and everything else to work on our behalf. We've got to support them.
Yes, sir.
I mean, look, not all of us need to be soldiers on the front line. But how many of us, I mean, look, how many of us in here have Netflix? And be honest. Be honest. Hands up, Netflix. Watch Netflix. Right. See, again, I know there's got to be more and more hands that should be going up. And you pay your monthly subscription. Right? Or you join someone else's membership that's paying the subscription. Or You may go through a pirate streaming service to be able to access it. Don't put your hand up for that because we're streaming live. Yeah? But the point is, somehow you got the device to be able to do that. You got the TV or the tablet to be able to do that. You show commitment. Do you know how many times on Facebook I see people put out postings? What can I watch on Netflix? Recommend something to me. But yet I don't see the same level of postings. How many black organizations out there that I can support or contribute to? Find out who even just has a WhatsApp group, who needs help promoting and putting out their organization, their programs, their meetings, their events. Find out who is working on your behalf, your service providers in your community, and see how you can get involved. We do not do that enough, because it's that C word, that dirty word, commitment. Make sense so far? All right, and the last one, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, so I think I've gone on for a bit too much. I think we can go deeper into this last one anyway. And I would always say, look, the ultimate solution is building our own institutions. That is the ultimate solution. You know, some of you may have heard me say this before, but look, you know, in our sojourn here in the UKKK, you know, we know that, look, with what we've gone through, I love the fact that we've had movements, because if it wasn't for those black movements, I would not exist today. So I've got to pay honor and tribute to those movements. And some of those movements evolved and grew into black organizations. And I'm so grateful for those organizations, because if it wasn't for those organizations, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be able to speak as I do today. But however, our organizations have not evolved and developed and grown into institutions. And if we're living in a society that says there is institutional poverty, there is institutional sexism, there is institutional racism, the only way that you're really going to combat that and establish yourself as a collective autonomy is by having your own institutions. Because institutions do not sit down and negotiate with movements. Institutions do not sit down and concede power to organizations. At best, organizations can be a thorn in their side. But institutions do sit down and back away from and concede to a next institution. So I think the ultimate solution is for us to build our own institutions, and that definitely means educational ones. So that's...
Much appreciated, thank you. And our final contribution in regards to solutions will come from Brother Jeffrey Mohammed.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. Good evening. Good evening. I'm happy that the ministers asked us to deal with solutions first, so that we can actually build on something that we all came here to achieve. It's a Friday night. I know you could have been in many different places, but you're here today. And my first solution is what Brother Hakeem ended his solutions with, and is that we must ultimately control our own education, our own curriculum, own our own schools and learning institutions. It's not a pipe dream, it's an absolute necessity. Because we wouldn't be sitting down here having this conversation if we had our own. There will be a different procedure for dealing with what they claim as unruly behavior. And when I say they claim, I'm using an example that was given to me about 72 hours ago. When I was in court and a young sister, we were representing her. Her auntie came with her 11-year-old daughter in tow because she had been excluded from school for 3 days because she had a pen and she threw the pen to another member of her class. They excluded her for that. Now, some of the things and the reasons why people are being excluded are diabolical. You know, there's other ways. I know you can hear me, right? You don't need this mic, do you? But maybe for the recording. But we have to understand that the reasons that they're given for permanent exclusions, inclusions when they're excluding, but they call it inclusion, that don't even make no sense to me. How can you include me in something and you put me out? So they use these semantics to make you think that they've been included, but they just push you out on road. So anyway, we've got to control our own education. We've got to be fearless. not be afraid to challenge the schools that are illegally and unfairly excluding our babies. Now, listen, you can't have big chat, big talk for your own people. But when your babies are being dealt with in such a despicable manner, you got no mouth for the school. You got no mouth for the headmistress, headmaster. But you got mouth for your children. Sometimes you got mouth for your brother and your sister. But we're not handling your precious babies the way in which these killing fields, and that's what I want us to call them, because they're not schools. They're killing fields. They kill the potential of every young black child that goes into them. And we've got to go with love for our babies, because you made love, some of you, to have them. So we need to show that love once the children are here. Is everybody all right? And we've got to go there and represent our children. Sometimes we like to blame the youths and the children, but we don't know what goes on in those schools. Do you? Many of us have never even been to the school since you dropped them off there on the first day. Many of you didn't go there before you even sent the child. Many did, many didn't. So we can't be afraid to challenge the schools that are illegally and unfairly excluding our babies. We've got to be actively involved. So you've got to be an activist parent. You've got to be actively involved in your children's education. Because if you don't, it will be so easy for them to be miseducated. We've got to effectively monitor the schools in which you send your children to. Because your children may have an incident in school. You may get an email, you may get a letter, or you may get a telephone call telling you that your child's done A, B, or C, and they're going to be an exclusion or they're going to be excluded. But we've got to monitor them. We've got to find out if what they're doing is actually legal. Because much of what they do is illegal. But because we are ignorant of the laws, the procedures, the policies of the school, and the law of education. I don't deal with educational law. I deal with criminal law. But the education is criminality, so I've got to learn it. And you've got to understand what's going on to protect your babies and ours. Become a school governor. Get involved in being an exclusion panel member. Because one of the worst things is for you to go to an exclusion panel meeting where they're trying to exclude your child and there's nobody in the room that looks like you. The whole bench here, you don't see no one that don't look like you, do you? Because we are in love with our community and we're trying to find solutions. So you've come to a panel and the people on the panel look like you. Yes? But when you go to your panel meetings to exclude your babies, you don't see anybody that looks like you and I. So we've got to qualify ourselves to be on those panel membership board, even just to make sure that they're doing it right. Yes? We've got to engage our children in an activity, support an alternative supplementary education program, and other courses. There are courses that you're going to hear about. We have several in our community. One such program is called the Entrepreneurs Club, where we engage young men and women into entrepreneurship and business. Let's give our sister Cheryl Phoenix a round of applause. You've got to look at providing practical training and education in business and entrepreneurship for our children. Why do you send your children to school? To get an education. Okay, that's one level. But why? Why do they need education? Oh, so they can get a good job. Come on, that's what they say, right? If you said to your child why they're going to school, it's pretty much ultimately so that they can get a qualification to get a good job or a job. Yes? So the bottom line is about making money. If they can learn business acumen, then what's the need of education? My 13-year-old son came to an Entrepreneurs Club event that we had here. And he said, Dad, I don't think I'm going to get myself into debt and spend £30,000 to get a loan. Wouldn't it be better for me to get that money and invest in my own business? Wouldn't it be better for me to get that money and buy a home, rent it out, get some income streams, and get growth in capital. This is a 13-year-old boy that came to a meeting right here and learned that as we sat down here. They're not going to learn that in business class in whatever school they go to. They're not going to learn it in these killing fields because they just want to manage our children. They don't want them to become the great geniuses that they all desired, they had the desire to be. So those are my solutions, brothers and sisters. But what we've got to do is we have got to show love for our children, love for our community, and don't be too quick to blame the children. Because many times they haven't done anything wrong. They may have just asked the question in a way that the teacher thought was offensive or challenging. And because they didn't have the answer, your child is now aggressive. Your child is now disruptive. These are the labels that they put on our children because they don't have the mind, the love, or the desire to educate them, bring out of them what the God has naturally put in them. So we've got a lot of work to do, my dear brothers and sisters, and I hope by the end of tonight, our programs will be taken on board and we'll keep this thing moving and stop our children from being mistreated in the educational system of this government. Thank you.
Seems like we have a lot of preachers on the panel tonight. So I'm hopeful that we could, extend the time and maybe stay here till midnight. Is that all right? Okay. So we were welcomed by Sister Cheryl. As I'm listening to the three brothers speak, and I apologize, we only have one sister, but Cheryl believes that she's every woman, and they're all in her. So, we decided to go for one today. But it sounded like, in just hearing you brothers give your solutions, because we're going to start with solutions, Ms. Phoenix, and then we're going to deal with the questions later. So we're reversing the way we're doing things today. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes in a few seconds. But I just wanted everybody to just consider, because if I was just traveling to the United Kingdom and I just happened to be invited to this meeting today and I was looking to educate my children in one of the schools in the United Kingdom, I'd actually head out and leave the country. Because what I'm hearing is it's a war zone. What I'm hearing is the children have to fight for what the school says it's offering, education. And if it's an educational institution, why do we have to pre-prepare so much and be prepared to be ambushed and be prepared to be kicked out before we've even got in the door? It seems like a tall order to me. It seems like starting a relationship with somebody who doesn't want you from the beginning. That's going to be a tough relationship, no? Some of you said you're in something like that. But that's tough. To want to appease somebody who doesn't like you, much less love you. How's love going to ever develop if there's no likeness, first and foremost? If there's no attraction? So it sounds as if we're entering into buildings and institutions wherein it's not designed for us. So are we actually insane if we keep going to places that tell us and by their actions show us that we're not welcome over and over again? Are we insane? That's actually a question. Who would say we're insane as a people? Can I see your hands? Okay. Let's see. Would you say that we're not as well as we should be? Because to be begging someone to love you is not a sign of self-respect. Because you should never force yourself into anywhere where you're not welcome. If someone don't treat you right somewhere, they poison you in the restaurant, you're going to go back next week. Can't hear you, sorry. No. So, lastly, Sister Cheryl, solutions. What would you say are the solutions to the problems that we have on the board? And we want to thank her for traveling so far, because she came all the way from from Slough, yeah. So thank you for traveling all the way from Slough to be here with us tonight. We are honored. So, Sister Cheryl, please.
Thank you. Greetings and good afternoon, everyone. Evening it is, isn't it? Sorry, and just to say, the reason why I've travelled so far, it was a last-minute appointment. Normally, I'm just like, nah, it's a Friday. But just check this, from following what you've just said, and brother
Jeffrey.
The reason why I was in Slough was because a young boy, 12 years old, just turned 12 the other day, started secondary school, obviously in September, so he's the oldest in his year group, was jumped 3 days ago, where are we, Friday, on Tuesday, by 12 young Somalian boys, like beaten to a pulp. This young man is autistic, but what they did, they phoned mum and said, oh yeah, he's going to be permanently excluded. This is the boy that was beaten up, by the way. Is going to be permanently excluded and is now in a PRU. And that's happened between Tuesday and today is only Friday. He's not been allowed to go to school. He hasn't been given a letter of exclusion. No one's told mum anything. She doesn't know anything. English is not her first language. She's actually from Congo. So they've basically run roughshod. So as she was telling me, the first thing she did when she got on the phone with me was literally burst into tears, because she was just like, she doesn't understand. They've been here for what, not even 2-3 years, and she sent her child to school. He's got a learning need, and because he's trying to fit in, they've got him carrying knives, they've got him carrying drugs, and he's only 12 and he's just started the school. So me being me, it's like, normally, no, I'm not going to do it because it's last minute. Why didn't you phone me before? But on this one, I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to come down. And we were in there from about 2:30 this afternoon, and I wasn't leaving until I got the result I wanted. And that boy will be going to a different school as of next week. So they had to call and make sure that happened. So, you know what I mean? It's like, they're taking liberties with our children. So anyway, back to the solution. Yeah. So that's the reason why I was late, because I weren't leaving. I would still be there now if I didn't get what I want. And they had to call who they needed to call. I don't care. You call them at home, you make them come to the school. That's kind of how I get down. And I will go exactly how you see me dressed. Sometimes I'll go with my jeans rip up. Sometimes I'll go with a full gele on my head. It's like, I do what I want, which is why I don't get funded by government or anybody else, because I want to do what I want, and none of you can't tell me nothing.
Such a rebel.
And I don't run the risk of losing my job.
Wouldn't you expel her from your school?
Actually, that has happened twice. I've been kicked out twice, and I still went on to do a law degree and an MA. So that says a lot, but not much, because I don't actually use them. So, but my solutions are stop.
Let me just stop you for a minute. So what you're proving to us then is the path to progress is to be expelled.
I think, do you know what the interesting thing is?
So those of you who have been expelled, celebrate.
The interesting thing is, I find that, you know, when a child, depending on how they get nurtured, whether it's by the roads or by their parents, I find that those children that have had that kind of rough type of start, to them, a lot of the time, they ain't got much to lose. So they either will take the path of road and run around stabbing up people, or take the path of determination and actually make it happen regardless of what the cave beast told them. So I find that when you really are...
You say cave beast?
Yeah, because
just in case some of you missed it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, you know, when the cave beast is pointing you down a direction, some of these young boys I speak to, and they're like, well, do you know what, miss? I'm going to make sure I got that dough and I've made that money and la, la, la. But their business sense is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. Do you understand? And once they turn it into something they can do, then boom, they're on a winner. So we've got some young, almost millionaires, and they're not even like my age, 21 yet. Yeah. You know, so I don't know why y'all laughing. But anyway, my solutions are to stop complaining and start doing. The one thing I know within our community, sometimes we love to moan. We love, and if I notice it on Facebook and social media, where when there's a bad news item, oh my God, thousands. And sometimes I purposely do run the experiment myself. I will post up bad news on my Facebook, and you'll see streams and streams and streams, and everyone's got something to say. Post up something positive. Nothing. It's silence. It's like, why do we love to wallow in misery? And I find that a lot. I can only talk about my personal experience, and I've got over 100,000 people on my Facebook, so I can go by what I see. Opening our own schools, form consortiums, all of us in here, whether it's 3 to 5, whoever, you can form a consortium and start running our own schools and PRUs. You don't necessarily have to call it a school. You can take over a pupil referral unit. Then I'll be happy for our children to be excluded every single day. But it can happen. You can actually do that. You form a consortium, whether it's a charitable status or whatever it is, and start managing and running these places where our children are being destroyed. Support parents' emotional well-being. This one is a big one for me. Like mental health amongst particularly women. Women are mostly the primary carers of our children, particularly our sons. And women are crumbling. It's so sad to see. I've got women self-harming. I've got children trying to commit suicide. And a lot of it is because these women are crumbling because they feel that they're by themselves. The amount of parents I speak to, even just today, I'm so isolated. I'm so alone. We need to think about a real network of whether it's brothers and sisters separately, whatever it is, of being able to support some of these women. The only thing I do right now myself is that if I have a female particularly who will call me and is in complete distress, doesn't know what to do, their child could have been stabbed, whatever it may be, they're completely isolated or even lost their child. They're isolated. There's no actual, they say victim support. Victim support, they don't call you. When my son was nearly killed, they gave me the number of victim support. All now, that was in 2015, we're in 2019. I ain't heard from nobody yet. They're not there, and we need something culturally specific. Someone that understands us and who we are and what we're going through. No one can understand when a child's been lost, unless that's happened to you per se, but you can still be there as a brother or sister to offer that support. So that's something that I'm definitely going to start pushing more on, because if our parents are crumbling, then what hope do our children have? Because they're looking to the parents. So that is another one. And again, look, open more mental wealth organizations to reset the mindset of our parents and our youth. Some of our children are leaving home damaged, going into school damaged, and then being penalised because of the damage. They're not being supported. The amount of children I see with educational healthcare plans that should be given support and nothing's been done. They're locked in rooms all day, no food, no work, and then some of them are leaving at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock from this after school activities, but they've done nothing all day. And mum doesn't know, despite mum coming to school. Dad doesn't know, despite dad coming to school every day and interacting with the teachers. No one's telling them anything. And the child, you know what children are like, how was school today? Yeah, it was fine. Who did you play with? Nobody. I just sat by myself. Why is that? Well, you know, I didn't really want to do X, Y, Z, or maybe if they go to lunch, or maybe they'll interact. But there's a lot of cases where children are completely in isolation, the preparation for the prison system. So I definitely believe that there needs to be more tapped in, particularly with the fact that I can average 8 calls a day. After I finish and won the parent's case, where do they go after that? There needs to be some sort of follow-on service that needs to be developed, that for the children and for the parents, that just in case they need to touch in, just in case they need to come to an event like this, can they get a babysitter? Do you understand what I'm saying? Just some practical things that we've all grown up in. I'm 21. But if you're over 30 or something, do you understand what I'm saying? Where you were always at someone's house and that was your cousin, even though you're not blood related, where mum would leave you there. All of the kids are there doing their thing, playing cards or whatever it is, and mum and whoever's gone out to do their thing. What they were doing when they were out, nobody knows, but 6 children later, and now we're all adults, I think we get an idea. More criminal defense solicitors and barristers to defend our youth. Now, I will call Jeffrey or another sister called Alison. They're the only 2 that I know are good. There's lots of criminal defense solicitors and barristers out there, but they're not that good, being honest. So unless we've got people who are unapologetic in their stance and are here for their community first and also their career, but we need more, because the way how our children are being funneled through the criminal justice system, even as young as 12, 13 and 14, is so quick, you don't even see it happening. You just think you're going for a meeting. And then you've also got, what I forgot to put in here, is also solicitors that deal with social services and things like that, because that's one of my biggest problems right now, having to deal with the social services, organisations and schools that are making up lies about parents. And I've got 4 solicitors right now, but they're overwhelmed with work. So that tells you something. And they're in North, South and East London. And every day I'm sending them a client. So that's another one. Push more of our community in political arenas. And I know, Brother Hilary, this is something that you always are talking about with regards to politics. Whether we like it or not, we need to start engaging effectively in politics to make sure that our community need to be held accountable to, our people need to be held accountable to us. We've got, 3 people? We've got Lammy, Diane Abbott and Dawn Butler. Chukwumuna, I don't even know if he's still in or not.
He's got his own party now.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So, and but when you think about those that are in power, it's like, yeah, who you gonna call? There ain't gonna be none of them. So realistically, we need to start pushing our own people, because we're not gonna be able to change the narrative sitting on the sidelines. We're gonna have to get in wig the pigs, unfortunately, and swallow around in the mud for a bit, you're going to have to do that, because if you want to fight the war, you can't sit on the sideline with your pretty frock. You've got to get dirty, and we need some people that are unapologetic and not frightened to go and get dirty and actually do that. For me, I tried it, and I ain't going back. I'll stick to the bit that I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? But I did, and my house was raided, and I was like, do you know what? I'm just a one woman with 3 sons. I'm a single parent. But I think it should be maybe a man and a woman, because women can be great manipulators when you need to manipulate. I'm being honest. When you need to manipulate your way through a certain system, then you need to do what you need to do, and just with good-looking black men. So it is just what it is, because you know what these cave bees like when they see our brothers. What was I saying? Open spaces for our youth to congregate in a positive manner. That's completely missing. Where do our youth hang out right now? And I'm not, we're on the streets, shopping centres. So if there's nowhere for them to go, then what do we expect them to do? We need somewhere. I used to go youth club. Most of us, I believe, used to have somewhere where you can just go. Your mum knew where you were with whoever who lives on your road and blah, blah. And all of this fighting that we see will quickly start to diminish and deteriorate because everybody knows each other. So we need to have somewhere where our young people can go. And I know it works because I've successfully done it myself in my local area. More skin folk who are kinfolk in these schools. If we have to send our children to these schools, then we need more of us, because teachers are leaving. They're running. They're literally running because they're also under attack. But they can attack you individually, one. But if there's 20, 30, 50,000 of you, then it's harder. It's like what they say about the sticks all coming together and it's harder to break. That is definitely something I think. Control our own media and narrative. That goes self-explanatory, because they're always talking about us. It's always negative unless we're running, dancing or singing. And as soon as we fart in the wrong direction, boom, he's a Jamaican, let's deport him, because we've seen our people being sent back already. What else? A large organisation specifically targeted to support our children and young people, the Black Social Services, something that the Black Child Agenda is currently working on, because we cover all of those areas. But right now we've got social services literally taking our children. Do you know that it's, for a local authority, per child that they take is worth 10 grand to the local authority? That's a lot of money. So it's good to just be scooping up our children. And if you hear about the exploitation, the physical exploitation, because there's children in here, I won't actually go into exact detail, the physical exploitation of our girls and boys, particularly in Hackney Borough, is a very interesting one. Business training and enterprise, which I know you've covered, especially, I'm really all about the young people. Create a community minibus service is something I posted on my Facebook page the other day, because our children are dying to and from school. So we need to actually start putting our money where our mouth is and get some sort of minibus service, coach service, hiring coaches, whatever it is, to get our children to and from school in one piece and or alive. Making sure when you send them out in the morning, they come back home in one piece. And the only way to probably do that, to avoid the postcode foolishness, is by protecting them and putting them on one of these minibuses to get them to and from school like they do in America. So that's some of my solutions.
Thank you, Sister Cheryl. So we've been joined by Barrister Power.
Good evening everyone.
And we're discussing solutions, Laurie-Anne. So we're starting with at the end, technically. So please, you've come in at the right time, so please share with us what you see as the solutions to the problems that's on the board.
Well, from a criminal justice perspective, because I mean there is such an esteemed panel here, you know, some of the most valid points perhaps have already been made. So, but from a criminal justice perspective, I've been a criminal defence barrister for nearly 20 years, and the vast majority of my practice involves defending, representing our young black men, but not just the black men, the young black women as well. And it never ceases to amaze me that when I ask them the question, not about what they did or didn't do, what do you want to be, who are you? Most of them look blank, and it's clear to me that at that point, they've never been asked the question in any real sense of the word. It's always just evolved naturally because they've followed their friends, or they think that they're good at music, or they think that they're good at something their friend is good at. But when you actually scratch beneath the surface of a 14, 15, 16-year-old boy, what's apparent to me the vast majority of the time is that they really don't have an idea of who they want to be, where they want to go. And so I always say, if you don't have an idea or a concept of where you want to be and who you want to be, then you can be taken off of your track. And so it just in terms of, from a criminal justice perspective, a lot of them lose hope once they're in the system. Once they're convicted of an offence, whether it's possession of a knife, an affray, they think automatically, because society has constructed it this way, that I've got no future anyway. Who's going to give me a job and I've been in trouble? Who's going to give me a job and I've been in the youth court since I was 12? So they write themselves off. Now, a solution that for many years I've suggested, and it's fallen on deaf ears, so I take the view that we've got to do it ourselves and push for it, is that if a young person knows that it's okay to hit a little bump in the road, you might get in a bit of trouble, but if you can turn it around and stay out of trouble until you hit the age of 18 or 21, if you can show that you're committed to even a vocation or education, that's the case. When you get to 18, whatever criminal conviction you have accumulated as a juvenile gets wiped from your record. That gives you a fresh start. And that does wonders for the mindset, because that 18-year-old boy who was heavily convicted of obstruction of police, of possession of cannabis, of possession of a knife, is no longer a young boy with those convictions. He's a young man with a fresh slate. And so that's just and it would cost absolutely nothing to do it. The money that the government are currently setting aside to build 3 super prisons is money that could be spent on initiatives such as that, such as schools and such as educational establishments run by us, for us. Run by us, for us. So that's just one solution that I'm extremely passionate about, because the thought of it for young people is a thought that gives them a fresh start. And a lot of them have been, a lot of the people, I'd say probably well over 2/3 of the people that I represent, and most of them, I'm talking about murder, serious drugs, and the potential of a life sentence at the end of any case that I'm dealing with. A lot of them, probably more than 2/3 of them, come from either a care or a PRU background, and normally the two go hand in hand. And ironically, my sister runs a care home, and my husband works in a pupil referral unit. And this is a circular discussion that we have all the time, because she's always cussing about them when they get to her in the home. He's always cussing when they get to the PRU, and I'm always cussing when I come back from court. But we have one thing in common. We love these children. And they have the greatest potential. Some of the young boys that I represent, by the end of a case which may last 2 or 3 months, not only did they not know who they wanted to be at the beginning of a trial, but when they are looking at life imprisonment, by the end of it, I can tell you one thing, they've got dreams and aspirations more than you could ever imagine. And so it's a shame that it takes that to tap into it. So what we can do as a community, and it's parenting, it's schooling, tap into their potential from a baby. Feed them with ideas. You don't have to know that you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or a musician, but give them the hope that they can actually achieve it. And a lot of them don't have that from any real sense. So practically, I think expunging criminal convictions for those young people who have committed themselves to change when they get to 18, preferably 21, is a practical step we could take.
Fine. Thank you very much. Now, as you were speaking, sister, I was reflecting on some of what most on the panel raised as a solution. And when you mentioned the exclusion and put it in the context that you just so eloquently shared with us, I was thinking about the psychological damage that is done when somebody receives that information who's a young teen. Someone's 13, 12, or 13, and you can no longer come back to a place where all your friends are, and a place you had projected in your mind that you're going to be attending until you're 18. That's a massive blow to the young person's confidence. And it was reminding me, it was reminiscent of just being fired from a job that you had planned, a great a great future for yourself, and you've got bills, that are not going to go away. So you're scurrying now to try and find a new job, but it's not as easy as or it's not as easy as imagined. So psychologically, when somebody is expelled, can you share with us, and probably yourself too, Hakim, and all of you really, what kind of psychological damage does it do to hear that you've been expelled from school and you're no longer to return to this place? And whether or not parents then not properly understanding how to counsel their children whilst they're going through that massive psychological shift, how much more damage is then added to the damage that has been done by parents mishandling that level of bad news coming to a young person?
Well, I mean, I think I kind of equate it to, imagine us as adults who have potentially been in relationships that have come to an end, and you feel rejected. The marriage has broken down, the relationship has broken down. Someone has rejected you personally, and the hurt that we feel as adults, imagine that feeling on a child. Because children are innocent until they're given a reason not to be. And so rejection is probably one of the strongest and most impactful emotions that we as adults can feel.
But some adults don't handle rejection very well.
They don't.
And the breakup of relations, as you just mentioned,
Can crush
some
you.
of them are walking down the street at the moment
Absolutely.
and have not handled it well.
Absolutely. And then that brings in the parenting aspect of it, because rejection is a natural part of life. It's going to happen, and actually it can be a good thing. But it's about managing your child's rejection. So most young people in certain schools come to the conclusion that at some stage they are going to be rejected from that school because they've seen it happen to their friends. So actually they're living out a self-fulfilling prophecy, and this is a psychological thing. Actually, I'm not going to get to the end of this school and get my qualifications anyway, so it's just a matter of time before that rejection comes to me. It's almost like going home and knowing you're going to get a beating. It's going to come, so I may as well just act up until it comes. And so parents do need to, I'm a parent myself, and it's not easy to always manage it, because you've got to be tough to the child, because you've got to teach them resilience. But the reality is that we shouldn't have to be teaching our 12 and 13-year-olds to protect themselves from systemic rejection that is going on. And I think that that is a generational thing we have to get over, because it's not just 1 and 2 children. The impact is community nationwide. Right. And so I don't think we should undermine how young people feel when they get sent home from school and told they're no longer welcome back again. And I think that we should treat that seriously.
Right, and expect it at some point, possibly as parents.
As parents,
the schools are preparing to expel our children.
Yeah.
So brothers and sisters, did you enjoy those solutions? Yes. Please, if I want to give you this opportunity to raise any questions that you may have, or to endorse some of the solutions that's been given. But in the interest of time, I'm going to ask everybody to keep their remarks down to 60 seconds, if that's okay. 60 seconds is a long time. Yeah? Okay. So, sir?
Brother Hakeem.
You have a microphone. Yes, sir.
Yes. Just wanted, if you can clarify the difference between organization and institution.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Organization is a body of people coming together. They may have a certain set of protocols, they may have a certain set of regulations, and they would have a mission, aim, and objective, and they come together collectively to see that through. An organization now doesn't necessarily own buildings. An organization doesn't necessarily have any type of lobbying power if you still want to deal with systematic government. And if you do not have lobbying power, that means that you do not control economical power either, or have economical autonomy. This is what institutions are built out of. This is what is now run by institutions. You've got to have economic, not financial, but economic autonomy. You've got to be able to lobby. You've got to be able to have ownership of whether it's buildings, or whether it's land. And more importantly, organizations can function on the charisma or character of an individual. An institution is bigger than any individual because it's self-perpetuating, self-lasting, because your protocols now become law and sustainable law of autonomy. Does that make sense? And that's what our organisations need to grow into.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Sister, I know you were.
Yeah, thank you. It's just something that my sister here, Barrister Power? Laurie-Anne. So you said that basically when we become 18, our any sort of criminal record that we had being juvenile gets wiped off. Yeah. That's what I understood it to be way back when, but I understand there's been a change in the law since 2013.
So I'm saying that as a solution, that could be what the government puts in place. It doesn't happen at the moment.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I'm saying that it doesn't happen at the moment. Once you're convicted, you're convicted. So that you're probably thinking about convictions being spent. Well, the way that employers get around that is that they now ask the question, have you ever been convicted? And of course, you can't lie. So you may have been convicted, but it may have been 15 years ago.
And it now shows up on your DBS check.
It will show up. It will show up. It will show up. So the solution is, if you hit the age of 18, having been in a bit of trouble, at 18, as long as you've been out of trouble and you can show that you've changed, that you should be wiped clean, completely, period. Should be.
Okay.
It's not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bravo.
I'm going to ask a question, but before I do, I want to respond quickly to the point that was made. I said I'm a former teacher, and I'm amongst family, so I will admit again, I do have a criminal record. In the early stages of my career, it was quite difficult to find work, but over time and having years, getting a job and keeping it for a few years, things did get easier to the point where now, if I did want to go back to school, which I don't, thanks to the teachings of brother Abdul Hakeem Mohammed, I don't expect to go back. But yeah, if I did want to go back, I wouldn't have a problem because I was in there for 7 years. So yeah, I agree with everything you said about them writing themselves off. I mean, as a teacher, I kind of saw that every day, and it happens from a really young age. My question is, you're dealing with like boys that are really young, like 12, 13 it's very young. Where are their parents when you're with these children? That's what I wanted to ask.
Their parents are children. Their parents are children.
Okay, I'm gonna give 5 more minutes for just some interaction there, and we're gonna go to some questions. So I've got 1, 2, 3. So sister, 4, yeah, and then we're gonna go back to the panel. You missed, brother. Sorry, sister. No, at the back there. We're gonna go to the back and then work forward. 1, 2, 3.
Hi, thank you. This may have been addressed earlier. Apologies, I come in very late from Kent all the way. It's for anybody really on the panel. I'm a counsellor, psychotherapist, and obviously it's something that's, like you were saying, societal issue, with lots of other issues that are kind of combined within the youth. What's happening with the youth at the moment? The subject of rejection is one definitely that I completely agree with. I mean, where do you see the role of therapists within this situation at present?
Good point. Anybody? Just to show you were calling for some therapists earlier, wasn't you?
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
Ask and it shall be given unto you.
Exactly, but dang. I believe there is a strong role for therapists. However, with what's going on nowadays, like how it works, from what I understand, is that you have to go through your doctor and wait for your doctor to refer you and but that doesn't happen. Like, if, for example, like I had a parent who lost her husband, she wasn't coping too well. She clearly needed therapy. But rather than that, what she did, to her own detriment, was call social services and ask them for help because she wasn't coping. She got her children taken away they got an emergency care order, boom, that was it. So where she actually needed the nurture. Now, a lot of parents either don't know how to find a therapist. They don't want to go to Becky. They want to go to someone that looks like them, understands them culturally, and they're out there because I have a database of them, but unless sometimes they have the money, then that's where the service tends to fall down. So, or waiting, and how long? Sometimes you could be waiting to 6 to 9 months before you can actually get seen, or they put you in for CBT therapy. You know, so it's like, yeah, this happened to you on the 1st of January. By the 1st of March, you should be cured. And it doesn't work like that. So there is a huge, huge place for therapy, and even for our children.
But all parents really should have some kind of therapy training, right? Because if our children are those who are receiving this really terrible news that they're expelled from school and we're being called up, and the child's indiscretions or the reasons why they were expelled are being explained to us, then how do we respond as parents in front of our children and the teachers? That's what I'm concerned about.
Do you know what's interesting?
Because when my mother sent me to school, she sent me with orders, because back in my day, I'm not 21, but back in my day, we used to get the slipper and the cane. Some of you remember? You said more than that.
I know.
But the point was, if you took the slipper and took the cane in, you wouldn't be suspended. If you didn't take it, then things would be escalated. And my mother told me don't allow them to give you the slipper or the cane. But sometimes we took it just for, you know, we just didn't want to bring that news home. So I say all of that to say, whenever my mother came up to the school and when I was in trouble, she was always on my side. You know, but most of the time in your experience, Brother Hakeem, you work in these schools. Do you find most parents support their children when they're in front of the teachers who may be biased against the child?
Can I just touch on a previous point and then finish on that point? So what was just said about therapy?
We need a microphone.
A little testing, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. The light's on.
Give me that. I think it's just come on.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's much better. When I've worked in schools dealing with inclusion, I find that most schools have never really, even if they do have an inclusion panel, but they do not have the right elements of the inclusion panel. And especially with what was said earlier by Brother Ryan, if you've got our children that are in PRUs and they need to make that transition from PRU back into mainstream, see, how is that going to happen unless you do have a culturally competent therapist? And when I've put together inclusion panels, I've made sure that there is a mentor that is culturally competent. There is an outside agency that deals with family therapy that is culturally competent. I've made sure that there is also a therapist that can deal with transitional periods that is also culturally competent, because when you're in that PRU, and like Sister Cheryl said earlier, it is you being set up to be institutionalized for a prison system. And when there is that sense of rejection, as the sister said earlier, and that feeds into the wider narrative of collective rejection, because we've got to remember we've been living in a country where we've been rejected for 4 centuries. And if you don't think that doesn't feed into the psychological aspect of us as individuals, we're very sadly mistaken. So we have to look at all of that. And when I've put together inclusion panels, and when we look at exclusions, do we know the number one reason why are youth are being excluded in the first place? The reason what they give. Do you know it's behavior? It's behavior. We need to look at that. It's behavior. And when we look at the wider aspect of that, what are they saying? They're saying that because you do not fit a certain behavioral trait that I find acceptable in my cultural and behavioral perspective, you have to go. Because you've got to remember, we've been excluded from everything from here to our tone, our language that we speak. As I've worked with a group of Somalis and Bengalis, and I remember saying to a teacher one time that I had to pull this teacher to one side and I'd say, look, what do you understand about this Somali community? It was a white teacher. And they said, well, not a lot culturally. I said, because you do not live amongst a community. You know, you come from Surbiton or Kingston. That's not Jamaica. Kingston upon Thames I'm talking about. And now you come into the inner cities and then you expect to be able to reach these young people, and you've just been telling him, you've been telling Somali youth, you've been telling this Bengali youth, look in my eye when I'm talking to you, because they're looking down. See, in their culture, a mark of respect when an adult is addressing them is to look down. But you think they're being defiant. Now, you've just put these two on exclusion because they were showing you respect, but you're not culturally competent to deal with them. We need to understand that cultural competence is not even a part of teacher training. You understand? It needs to be. Because if we go back to the Windrush era, when they told our parents to come here, we need to remember that our parents had a 5-year plan, and that was to go back, right? That means that when you're an economic migrant and you do not have long-term plans to stay, that means that you do not have a plan to give birth to a whole generation in a country that you're now living in. The government did not expect us to be here after 5 years. So here you've got a government, you've got a system that did not expect you. You've got a parental and home background that did not expect for you to be here. So you're dealing with elements of a great mess, of great confusion. And it's going to be upon us to be able to sort out that confusion, as sister said, brother said. It's going to be upon us to be able to understand the elements that are involved in this. Because if we look at government stats, and you can go online to gov.uk and look at the ethnicity facts and figures, and when you find that, and can I throw out this point? Because I would like to hear from because this is a very important point. I want you to, and it ties into what you've just said about parents. No, it really does. It really does.
Because what I don't want to do is spend a whole.
No, I'm not. I'm gonna finish up on this point. I'm throwing it out.
Okay.
I'm throwing it out for everyone to address because it's really important.
We ain't got time for everybody to address.
Well,
it,
okay.
But we can put it
to
out
think
there.
to think about to think about because it's very important because this is what they're writing about you in their government reports.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of important. Now, according to their government reports on ethnicity facts and figures regarding pupil exclusions, Black Caribbean pupils were permanently excluded at nearly 3 times the rate of white British pupils, and this is going back to the 28th of September 2018, and it was last updated in October 2018. So we need to wait for the new report that's coming out for 2019. Then it goes on to say, across the broad ethnic groups, Black and mixed ethnicity pupils, meaning Black mixed, had the highest rates of both temporary and permanent exclusions. So they're saying, look, regardless of Caribbean, just Black right across the board, highest rate of permanent and temporary exclusions. But however, there's a Pacific group of Caribbeans that are just 3 times more likely. The question is, why is it Caribbeans? See, that's what I want to throw out there. Why? Why is it those that come from a Caribbean background that are 3 times more likely than any other group, including African groups? So I want to throw that out there regarding the parenting aspect. I want to throw that out there regarding the social context and the historical aspect. Why Caribbean?
Okay, thank you, brother. So, brother Jeffrey, please, in regards to when you're called to a police station and our young brothers are arrested for a number of crimes, and their parents also arrive at the police station, what is generally the relationship between parents and their children that is either positive or not so good?
Generally, there is there's no relationship, which is very sad to say. Sometimes the person who's actually at the police station isn't a parent. It's someone from the adult scheme, maybe an auntie or another person. But generally, we have, as Laurie-Anne said, children having children. So the parent has other children, young children that they are at home with, and they can't leave those young children to deal with the one who may be 14, 15, 16, who's in the police station at that time. But what I always do, and it's one of the things that you mentioned about how do we deal with the situation when we go to schools, how are we with the children and with the school teachers? And I'll use myself as an example. I know children tell lies, because as adults we do as well, right? But what I always...
Sorry, everybody didn't answer.
But what we have to do is when we are with our children in that type of environment, we got to be found back in our children and supporting them. And what you do when you go home and handle them, that's between you and them. But in the presence of these teachers, they called me in recently for something that my son done, not even in the school. But yet he was bringing shame and disrepute to the school. And he wasn't even at the school yet. But, you know, we went and spoke to them, but they said that, boy, this man, whatever I say, he don't want to hear it. He's backing his child. And for me to have my son see me back him, when we get home, we handle our business at home. But for him to see us back him.
Not in the car?
Nah. Well, I was so hot in the car just talking. Okay. I was sweating and I nearly crashed a few times. And my son is here. He said, don't wait till you eye him out, but he's here. Mm-hmm. And he can bear witness to this. And I said to him, don't take away my power from me in that environment, but I'll back him in the room. And, you know, the man was saying my son was supposed to have a detention. I told him, don't go, no detention. The man said, oh, my son must write a statement. I told my son, don't write no statement. Don't do anything until you've spoken to me. I'm a lawyer. We plead the fifth, no comment. My dad said, don't do this, and they won't do it. So what I'm saying is, they've got to find us passionately. Not emotional, I didn't say emotional, passionately defending our children at the police station, at the schools, wherever we find them in a particular predicament. Why do I say this? Because there were times where I may have found myself in exactly the same position as my children. May have done. Don't smile, son. May have done. But what I'm saying is, today is different from 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Right, exactly.
The effects that happen today are so detrimental now that we can't put it in the same position.
Right.
But if our children see us sometimes defending them, then we can deal with them in a different environment, outside of the enemy's ears, right, outside of the enemy's influence, then we can let them know, listen, son, don't do this.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Don't do this. But we as a family need to be in the police stations with people like myself and others who will sit down. We won't even discuss the law. We'll find out what's going on at home. What can we do to support? We sometimes forget why we're there. We deal with the legal stuff later, but we sometimes have to understand, because there's such a disconnect sometimes from the child and the parent that you can't even start trying to deal with the legal issues until you deal with the social issues first.
Right. Yes, sir.
Can I just add to that from a legal, because it's a school to courtroom, from a legal perspective, the presence of parents in the courtroom is so important. Absolutely. You have to remember you've got 12 strangers deciding the fate of your child. The first thing juries really do when they come in is they look at the defendant in the dock, because they're trying to work out who he is. Then they look around the courtroom, and all too often there's no one in the public gallery, there's just the child. And so subconsciously that's got to have a bearing on the jury. Where are his parents? Mm-hmm. Conversely, if the jury see that young person coming to court every day with mum, with dad, with granny, with auntie, they're going to think, well, hold on a minute. He comes from a supportive and stable family who are obviously there for him no matter what. Are we more willing to give him the benefit of the doubt? And that may not be a conscious reasoning for them, but subconsciously, I'm of the view that being present in the courtroom when 12 strangers are deciding the fate of your child is really important.
Right, very good. So, and I think, I just want to also clarify, I think when Brother mentioned the support of our children and going into schools to hear what the teachers are accusing them of, and he mentioned to be passionate but not emotional. It wasn't that order, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's very important, because as a parent or as an adult, if you go in and start cussing and getting up in the teacher's face, then they will be able to say, oh, this is where they get this kind of behavior from. It runs in the family.
That's right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it's very important that you increase your vocabulary.
Yes.
And your every fourth, fifth word is not BCRC. Everybody all right?
But then you're passive aggressive.
Right. but I think it's important that that we all learn that if we are going to attend any, meeting or, be the defender of anybody, that we know how to conduct ourselves and appreciate if you're going down to school. It's not necessarily the best thing to put on your Adidas tracksuit and your trainers, because you're going into an environment where people present themselves in a way that show you they're in authority. And if you're in authority over that child and you're responsible for their well-being whilst they're in that institution, you have to act like a responsible adult and dress like one too. And sometimes we don't really care how we keep ourselves. We're going to have a meeting with a teacher with a baseball cap on. And you say, just accept me as I am. Well, yeah, but do you really want to be successful? And if you want to apply for a mortgage and go and roll up in the building society with a baseball cap on and your Adidas tracksuit, your credit score might be good, but they'll still turn you down. Unless you're Dr. Dre, obviously, you don't need no mortgage. But you follow where I'm coming from, because there's obviously different levels for different things. And when you're on a particular level, you can get away with anything. You can roll up however. But we're dealing with a war zone, it would seem, very clearly from what I'm hearing. And if our children are being set up for exclusion because that is the surest way to a prison cell, then we have to take what's being discussed here this evening very serious.
Can I
because
add to this? Can I add to this?
I'll come to you afterwards. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Quickly add to it, because even though we're saying about what we're saying, but the one thing I find with a lot of parents is that they don't have any understanding of anything to do with the school system. Not only do the parents not really have an understanding, neither do a lot of the teachers, even the head teacher themselves. When I go in and I speak to the head teachers and the panel, etc., they have no idea of education law. All they will tell parents is it's school policy. Do you know how many school policies I've had changed and taken down? Chikezi is one of them, where Carolyn represented. Mm-hmm. Because the policies, if you see most school policies, and I'll tell all parents, download the policies off the school, particularly behaviour, particularly learning, and all. Download every single paper. Because what will happen is when they come for your son or daughter, they're going to say it's school policy, and they will change the school policy first, and then put it back on the website. So make sure you download it as soon as your child starts that school. They do have to redo it every year or every 2 years. But the policies 9 out of 10 times aren't worth the paper they're written on. And then including on top of that, do not go to the schools by yourself. Don't go alone, because everyone thinks the funny thing I find with my community is that when we're talking to each other, we're a bad man or a bad gal. We got mouth and chat for days. As soon as we sit down in front of these teachers, we go mute.
Is that because of the standard of conversation is so low when we're dealing with each other that it's easy to talk for days?
No.
But when you're in an environment where you've got to defend something that's out of your comfort zone, then we lack the communication skills.
There's a lot of fear of these teachers, and it's not even the fact that they're a teacher. It's a lot of fear of them.
But the fear generally is born out of being ill-equipped.
Yeah.
Because if you're equipped for something, then that fear dissipates.
But then remember, why would you be equipped in education law? You're sending your children to school to learn. So for you to now be faced with...
But then again, that can be challenged. See, you call it a school.
Yeah.
And most of us send our children into buildings that we have not done any research on in regards to the accomplishments of that school. I had a young person this week, and he's trying to organize... him and his mother's trying to organize the best university to go to. And he's such a bright boy, like such a bright boy. And he's being offered places at all of the top universities. And he's perplexed, which one shall I accept, which one shall I accept? So I said to his mother, ask him, who does he actually want to work for, or what line of biochemistry does he want to go into? And if he wants to become a biochemist, which he does, who is the most successful biochemistry firm in the world? And if he decides I want to work for Pfizer or someone else, then he should look at what universities feed or do Pfizer approach to headhunt for their next crop of employees. So that is, then where you're trying to get to, and because you know where you want to go, then your route now is clear. I want to go to the university that feeds into the company that I want to work for. So if Oxford takes 30%, then it's better Oxford than Durham. It's better Oxford than Manchester, who may take 10%. You follow where I'm coming from? But most of us, we send our children to schools with no clue of what we desire for them to be at the end of the process.
But there's a reason.
And most of us, if we had a plan for our children, then we wouldn't even consider most of the places that they're in being expelled from. You wouldn't even consider it. Because most of those schools don't send any children to any decent university in this country. And if you want your children to go to university, you've got to consider what school they're in. No? Because there are certain universities that's designed just to take your money. And they know after you get your degree, you won't be able to do nothing with it. And you'll never get out of the £50,000 a year wage bracket ever. So that means you'll never live in Bishop's Avenue. You won't even live in Brixton.
And at the rate it's going.
Or Peckham or Dulwich. Or now Dotty Harlesden. Not even Harlesden.
Hey, easy now, easy. Representing North Wheezy.
But once upon a time, that kind of money would do something. Today, it does nothing. So let us be, because as we're closing, I want to go to Brother Hakim and go to Brother Twilight. It's important that we start to now drill down regarding our responsibility as parents. Because that word is being used a lot, parents. But if we raise the criteria as to what a parent is, then you might find that many of us who have children have not done too much parenting. And our willingness to scale ourselves and to measure ourselves against the criteria is critical in this day and time. Because you can't keep going around thinking you are what you're not. It means you're deluded. And one of the definitions for insanity is a state of mind which prevents normal perceptions and behavior or social interaction. Think about that. An inability to socialize, an inability to engage in decent behavior. These are some of the definitions of insanity. And I know what, the common definition is, doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result. Yeah, there's also a little more to it. And we've got to stop being insane. What do you think? We've got to stop conceiving children out of lust. Because I'm hearing a lot of babies are having babies. And if babies are having babies, then we have to have another conversation about that. But Brother Hakeem, then Brother Twilight.
I just want to say from your point and Sister Cheryl's point, and going back to what I mentioned, there's a reason why I said about in the report regarding Caribbeans being 3 times more likely. I'm not saying it doesn't happen to our brothers and sisters from the continent of Africa, so please don't make that mistake.
When he says Caribbean, he means St. Lucia.
However, when we look at so-called Caribbeans, when we look at so-called West Indians, and when we look, how many of us in here are in our late 30s, 40s, 50s? Right, and went to school in this country. Now, how many of our parents joined that school as governors? How many of our parents would show up and monitor that school? See, none of them did.
Because they trusted the school, though, didn't they?
Ah, there you go. And why did they trust the school?
Because white people are God. Jesus.
There you go. Because they were told to come to the mother country. You understand? This is the standard for you. This is the value system for you. You got to remember that a lot of our people, when they came here from the Caribbean, because I can know my mum, my stepfather, financially, they was on a working class level, but they had upper middle class values. You understand?
Very Caribbean.
Yeah,
There's
very
no
Caribbean.
way, there's no way that I could mistake my playing out clothes for my Auntie Valerie clothes. And God forbid if I put on my church clothes to go and play out in. So I had my school clothes,
You did.
playing out clothes, Auntie Valerie clothes, church clothes. Do you know that's very upper middle class?
Very upper middle
And you
class.
change according to what you have to deal with. Anyhow, you didn't wash before food. You know, it's get the belt time, innit? And we would have to sit around the table and eat. Do you know, again, that's very upper to middle class values. You don't eat on road. Why? Because I don't want no one to think I don't feed you. You understand? These are very upper to middle class values that got eroded. Now, when you look at parenting of today, how many of those values were handed down? See? But now, how many of the behavioral traits of our cultural background of not going into the school was handed down?
Yeah.
Just trusting the school and not questioning the school and not taking that level of commitment to deal with the school was handed down. See, this is the reason why I'm saying we've got to look at the aspects of who is being excluded, to what level they're being excluded, and why they're being excluded, especially when they say behavior. I can't stress that enough. Seriously. I just wanted to throw that point out there just to
I'm going to come to
emphasize.
you, sisters. I see you. Brother Twilight.
Greetings.
Greetings.
I just wanted to follow on what Brother Jeffrey said, because I work with young people in school as well. And I also do some work in a primary school with young boys. And almost every single one of those boys, I can tell, does not come from a home where it's about passion when something is going on. It's pure emotion, and it plays up in school. And there's no rationale. So then when their parents come to the school, it's the same thing. Then they end up being barred from the school, can't come back to the
Right.
school. School don't want them there.
Right.
And my thing is that in the work that we do in our communities, because Brother Hakim and I, we work together, and we put on workshops for parents to raise their awareness about these kind of things. And at a point in time in this country, people will come out to those things. Now they don't even come out for those workshops that are being offered to them for free. They ain't got to pay for them. Getting expert insight on what they need to do and how to look after their children and how to have the confidence to speak to these institutions without having fear. And I do believe that the issue of the erosion of the culture and also the dynamics of how we're constantly being attacked, constantly having something taken away, something picked apart, and I feel that we find ourselves giving up more and more and more and more of who we are, to the point to now, even the definition of family ain't even what we used to. The definition of family is something else. And by the time our children have children, the definition of man and woman is something else.
You got to ask questions
So
now.
we have to understand what it means to have cultural retention. We need cultural realignment, and then we need to retain that culture, because that's how we maintain our survival and defend ourselves. First job of a parent is to protect their children.
Thank you, Twilight. My sister, on the second row with the blue jumper on. Yourself, sis. Okay. So you're putting your hand up for her, were you? Okay. So a conspiracy. Okay.
Hi. My
Okay.
question's to Brother Hakim.
Which one? I'm a Hakim too.
Oh, sorry.
I know I'm still getting
You've
This
got
is
it
Trevor
right.
Hakim. I'm
Sorry.
Abdul Hakim.
Okay.
So remember our names, okay?
I will do. I just wanted to know how many of the children or young people that you work with have special educational needs and disabilities. What percentage?
That's actually a good point. Because I would say that
Too many.
actual registered statemented nowadays, it's less than half. But that's only because of how the system has changed. Because now funding has been taken away from schools. A lot more of the pastoral programs have been taken away. So a lot more children that should be registered as SEN or not?
Yep.
Now, one of the reasons why is because a few years back, it was very hard to exclude a child that was on the SEN register. Very, very hard. Now it's very easy. Remember I said about behavior before? So a lot of the time, these SEN children now are being excluded for behavioral issues, and it's not a behavioral issue, it's a learning issue. And because a child is frustrated and they're not being dealt with or taught correctly according to their learning needs, they get frustrated and it plays out in behavior. Yeah? So I would say that now 3/4 of the families and children I deal with have some type of learning difficulty. Now, when you look at the prison system, which I'm sure that Ryan could even educate you and even better than what I can, it's perhaps, more than half of all prisoners, especially over the last, 5 to 10 years, have learning difficulties. So you can see how there's a ploy going on, and I'm hoping at some point...
63%, by the way.
63, there you go. There you go, more than half. Yeah? So, sister, I would say 3/4 of the young people that I deal with have some type of learning difficulty, but however, according to the school system, it's not that high because they've stopped doing assessments because, number one, sometimes it is just down to money. But now it's also down to school structure and school system. And you've got to remember that there's a whole game being played. At one time, education used to mean enlightenment. Now education means economics. The reason why is because you can have two schools in the same geographical location, practically 5 minutes or 10 minutes apart. But yet one head teacher is on £10,000 to £20,000 more than the other head teacher. Why? Because his school is higher up on the league table. Why is it higher up on the league table? It's because he's able to play this game called off-rolling, but also keeping dual rolling at the same time. So not only do you have pupil referral units that pop up, you've also got these places now popping up called alternative provisions. That we can send young people to, who most of them have SEN needs. And we off-roll them, send them to these alternative provisions. We can keep them on dual roll, which means that we keep some of that money that travels with them. Because Brother Twilight, they're worth about £9,000 each student. We can keep half of that money. Also, it looks like we keep our exclusions down because we don't have to write it down as an official exclusion. But we know we have excluded them, especially when it gets to be year 10, year 11, when they're going to be doing now their GCSEs, and we need to show that the school's going to... But a lot of the times, because the parents are not educated and don't know, and a lot of the time the parents sign off on this because the head teacher will say, this is better than an exclusion.
Okay.
And it's not going to be recorded as such.
Thank you for that. I'm going to come to you, sister. There's a lot of hands. So I want someone to count off these hands because we want to give 1, 2...
Oh, look at the hands. There's more.
We're not going to be able to get to everybody, but we're going to try our best. But there's a couple of points I want to just reference with the panel real quick. Because in regards to going to some of these schools, and if you're even minimally educated as an individual, and I say minimally educated, I mean you may read for half hour to an hour a day, without being prompt. You just personally read something for half hour, an hour a day. If you go to most of these schools and have a conversation with most of these teachers, they're very backward. And I meet some of our people in the community who tell me they're teachers, and I cringe. Because I have to ask myself, you are a teacher. Like, I would not put my child in your class because you cannot even speak. Your because is cause. Are you following me? So if we're in England and I'm sending my child to school, then my child should come home speaking English. You get me? And that's the kind of diction now we're having to, accept from these individuals who call themselves teachers. So therefore, as parents, it means our standards are diminishing because we're allowing those who are not much smarter than us, if at all, to teach our children. Those who are teaching our children should be so smart, and we as parents should be looking up to their scholarship. But if we're struggling to find excellence in teachers, I'm telling you, we're better off keeping our children at home and going part-time and allowing sister to go part-time. Because look, when we don't lift marriage, then this is what happens to a community. when we don't promote marriage before reproduction. This is what happens. And God is allowing this to take place for us to see what happens when you just go and wet your whistle. Are you hearing me? Everybody, sorry for that, young people. Sorry. But when we just follow our passions and produce children without any love, care, consideration, or any desire to marry the person who we are sharing bodily fluids with, then this is the result. These meetings have to happen as a result of deviation from proper institutions. You mentioned institutions? Marriage and family comes out the institution of marriage. But we want to say fam and family, and there's no commitment. So you can't be fam and have your hands in my pocket. It makes no sense. So I wanted to just put that there because I wanted to ask you panelists real quick before we go to the audience. Do you think what's taking place, Brother Jeffrey, Brother Ryan, I'm going to start with you. I haven't heard your voice since the opening. Do you believe that what's taking place in regards to the pipeline to prison, that there's a conspiracy, there's an architect behind this? Or is it just as a matter of bad parenting? Is there an architect behind it?
I'm going to be honest, I think it's a bit of both.
Bit of both.
And the reason why I say that is because, look, I work in the youth offending service and I see bad parents every day.
Right.
Honest
So
to
are
God,
the bad parents then feeding into the conspiracy constructed by an architect?
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. And the reason why I would say that is because, okay, when I go to my local Peru and I see some of my young people, the first time I ever went to the Peru, I had to walk around it. And the reason why I had to walk around it is because it looked like a prison. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. There was a fence around it. I went to the front gate. I had to buzz in. Looked just like Feltham. There was a fence. Like I said, I'm 6'6". I had to look up at the fence. The fence was high. Once I got through the first gate, there was a navigate. Then when I got through the second gate, I then went to reception. Even the way reception is written looks exactly the same as it does in Feltham. When I went through, there was a knife arch. I was then wonded. Actually, no, I wasn't wonded because I'm not a young person. When I looked at reception looked like prison. When the teacher was walking around, the teachers have keys, like the guards in prisons. When I was put in a room with a young person, I was locked in like it was a prison. As you walk down the corridor, each door is locked with is it a key? A swipe key? Yeah, with a swipe key, like it is in a prison. Even the room that they put me and the young person in, all right, DJ. So I was going to start bubbling my head to that. Sorry. Even the room that they put me and the young person in looked like an interview room. And I said to the young person, do you realize what this looks like? And he was like, no, what? I said, blood, this looks like a prison. Okay, I know I shouldn't have used the word blood. I'm sorry. I was just caught up.
Not the best diction.
Yeah, I know.
Panelist.
But I said to him, this looks like a prison. Don't you get it? And it was at that point in time when I was actually talking to him that it's like he said, it's like Brother Hakeem said, it's just that a lot of these young people do have learning needs which are undiagnosed. They're called behavioral problems. It's only when they get to the school or they get to the Peru is it then diagnosed as a learning need. But then now it's too late for you to get back. So now we've got to keep you here.
Parents should know their children are a little slow in certain areas.
But the thing is,
parents are supposed to protect their children, is that not right?
They are supposed to, but it's like
No.
exactly, and just like the sister saying, it's down to the professionals.
Is it down to the professionals?
It shouldn't be.
It can't be.
I completely agree with you.
Look, I remember, brother, going to. Can I get some order, please? Order. I remember my eldest daughter was a little unwell. In fact, she was very unwell. And we went to the GP the Saturday morning. And there was an Asian sister who was the GP. And she took the stethoscope and put it on my daughter's chest and done the pulse and then wrote out a prescription. So I said to her, you must be God. Because if you really want to know what's wrong with her, you would have engaged me as her father and asked me what has she been eating, and what type of behavior has she been, or symptoms has she been showing. She was just quick to write. So she was a licensed drug dealer, obviously. So my point is, when she wrote the prescription, I just tore it up and we went back home and went to traditional methods. So I don't believe that professionals, so-called, who are educated through a system that is expelling our children, are the best ones qualified to diagnose our problem. I have problems with that. But we'll come back to it. And since we've got like tons of people here, but I'm going to get to you. I'm going to get to you too. You've been patient. But in regards to conspiracy, I've got one. And if you could just be 30 seconds, panelists, and just let me know what your views are in regards to whether you believe it's just our ignorance, or is our ignorance playing into a conspiracy that has been constructed prior to, you know, our ignorance being as severe as it is. Sister Laurie-Anne?
Our government has given us the answer to that question. A government-led investigation into the Metropolitan Police Force found that they were institutionally racist. A government-led investigation into the criminal justice system found that they were institutionally racist. Although not yet government-led, the figures are indisputable that the school system that serves our children is institutionally racist. The system that is meant to serve us is institutionally racist. And so the answer to the question is absolutely yes. There is an architect to our failure.
So even though you are an advocate in criminal courts, I remember I was in court a long time ago, and the judge, did I say a long time ago? Doesn't mean you know, bad if I was there last week, but it wasn't last week. But when I was in court a little while ago, I was doing well with the case, and my counsel was doing very well, but the judge didn't like me. So the judge used his influence to try to sway the jury's opinion towards a guilty
verdict.
But this was overt. You know, his intervention meant a lot, but by God's grace, I was successful and I got out of there in one piece.
Amen.
So have you found this? And would you say, even though we have good counsel like yourself and Jeffrey and others, but there's someone who is above both of you who are Caucasian in the majority?
I'm always grateful when I find an overtly racist person in power, because I will call them out on it. The danger is when you don't see it, you don't hear it, but you feel it. Because it's more difficult to call that out. And that is institutional racism. Because the real racists don't show their hands.
Exactly. That's great. Thank you. Brother Hakim.
Leading on from our brilliant and esteemed legal representative, 100%, it is a setup, it is by design. There is an architect, 100%. Look, the Slavery Abolition Act 1833 was totally repealed. It was repealed in 1998. Look it up for yourself. This is not a conspiracy theory. I'm giving you social fact. It was repealed in 1998. The reason why it was repealed in 1998 was so the British government could sign up to the Human Rights Article 4 coming from the European Union. The human rights under Article 4 says, prohibition of slavery and forced labor. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. No one shall be required to perform forced or compulsory labor. For the purpose of this article, the term forced or compulsory labor shall not include any work required to be done in the course of detention, which means prison. You with me so far? Right. Now, the Equality Human Rights Commission done a report, How Fair is Britain? They done this report in 2008. They found the proportion of black people in prison in England and Wales is higher than the United States. A landmark report released by the Equality and Human Rights Commission reveals. This report drew from a 2008 Ministry of Justice document where the footnote said, this is a Ministry of Justice Department document, and it states, Black prisoners make up 50% of the prisoner population, and this compares with 2.2% of the general population at that time. There is a greater disproportionality in the number of black people in prison in the UK than there is in the United States of America. This is the British government writing a report on you.
Thank you, brother.
Can I just finish with just last,
Very
real
quickly,
quick? Real quick.
time's
Do you want
the
me to
enemy.
finish on this? This last bit. This last
I
bit.
can overrule them all.
He can. He can exclude me. Now, Ben Bowling, Professor of Criminal Justice at King's College London and former advisor to the Home Affairs Select Committee states, we are reaping the effects of criminalizing a community from the 1970s. Why the 1970s? Because that's when we had the birth of our most powerful black liberation movement in this country. And we've been criminalized since then. This is done by design. Remember the report said also the prison population has doubled in a decade. That's from 1998 to 2008. And the report also states, I'm finishing on this, the report also goes on to show the problem may start at school. The commission points out that black children are 3 times as likely to be permanently excluded from education. See, look, you need slaves. If you need slaves, you need a plantation. That means you need prisons. And that's the reason why also from 1998 up until 2008 and beyond, prison became such a big investment on the stock market. You can buy shares in prison. And if you're a good businessman, an entrepreneur like my brother here, you are not going to invest in a business where you are not going to reap financial rewards. So it is by design.
Sure. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Brother Jeffrey. I'm going to score you for how well you have obeyed instructions here. Because I can see why some of you would be expelled. Because you don't listen.
My answer to the theory about whether this is by design and it's been architected by people in high places is absolutely yes. And I'm going to give you 2 passages from your beautiful Bible that you have and read every day. First is Psalms 94, verse 20. King James's version says, shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by law. So these people in government make laws and frame mischief. And the laws that they put in place most definitely ill affect us more so as a people. And also Exodus 1 and 10. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Now, this is your Bible. Now, you're looking at it like a history book, where it's in perfect present tense. These people are conspiring against young black men in particular, but young people black people in general.
So the answer is yes.
Absolutely yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for those scriptural passages also. As you're reading scripture, I want to add to it. In Acts 7:19, it reads, he exploiteth our people and oppressed our fathers, forcing them to abandon their infants so they would die. And where are they dying? Yeah. First, their brains are being killed. And then we're being locked away. And Sister Laurie-Anne, it grieves me whenever I hear an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 17-year-old receiving 18 years in prison. I personally don't care what they've done. That is too long a time. Because the brain fully matures at 25. So that person is a true representative of a child. And the person who should go to school, don't you think is the school system? We should put the school system in prison. Some of you are trying to think about how we're going to achieve that, right? But anyway, lastly, Sister Cheryl, and then I'm going to come to you for your quick questions, yeah? So brother who's got the microphone, did you clock everybody? Sister, you've already had your hand, so there's no time to double dip. I'll just say that. Sister there, I'm coming straight to you next. Sister Cheryl Phoenix.
Yeah, Absolutely, obviously. Hence the black child agenda.
You say obviously.
It is, because if we can't see it as clear as day, I've been screaming about this for years. Like, when did I start? 2011. And I could see it even when I was in business back in the day. And it's very clear. Everything that happens in America is coming here. The privatization of the prisons is here. And it's interesting how many government ministers actually have a financial interest and hand in the prisons. Right. You've got states in America suing the government because they don't have enough prisoners. And where are those prisoners coming from? The school system. Mental health institutions and also the pharmaceutical industries are making trillions upon trillions by diagnosing our children as young as 2 and 3 with mental health conditions, when sometimes it is just delayed learning. But if you've got a drug that this child will be on for life that's going to completely numb them and dumb them down so they can be miseducated long enough, then that's it. You've got an actual candidate for life. So it is a systematic construct. My thing is, what the hell are we going to do about it?
Well, let me before you go there, because this is a serious indictment.
It's a very real one.
Because what you're saying is that there's a conspiracy that is hatched in Downing Street and goes all the way to Buckingham Palace. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. But remember when we were invited to build this wonderful place with the streets that were paved with gold, and we were invited with, rose petals on the floor and treated like royalty. Remember those times when our parents lived there, when our parents came over? Since the European Union and all the rest of that happened, we became surplus to requirements.
Right.
We don't need you anymore. And obviously our wealth increased and our education increased. So the manual labor type of jobs that we were doing, we ain't doing that no more. I'm not cleaning nobody's toilet.
Right.
You understand? And neither would my parents. So with that, what are we doing? And if we're not making it through the education system, there's plenty bright, new, shiny prisons there for you. And there's plenty mental health institutions there for you. The amount of people of my age group, older and younger, who I see on the streets selling themselves because they have been completely broken via the system. The amount of parents who need support and help, who have been completely broken and their children taken away. Every single one of these institutions make money to those who are in power. Mental health, children and families, the prison system, the school systems are all private businesses, and the more children they can get in EHC plans, even though it costs, if they don't feel the child will fit the criteria, they're not going to bother. Okay. But just so parents know quickly, you don't need to wait for the school to get an EHC. Go onto your local authority website, download the form if you really believe that your child needs to be assessed, and get them assessed, and then the school have to then fill out the form and then send it back to the local authority. Don't wait on the school. I keep seeing it, and these kids are it's just a nightmare.
Thank you, sis. So just a quick poll. Who agrees that, as the panelists unanimously agree, that there is a conspiracy to expel our children from school for them ultimately to end up in prison? Can I see your hands? But remember this, though, brothers and sisters, very seriously. I want you to vote. I want you to tell me how you're thinking. Those of you who don't believe that, can I see your hands?
One.
Those of you who are abstaining, can I see your hands? I'm going to start that poll again, because some of you didn't do anything. Those of you who are abstaining, can I see your hands?
They might not know what it means.
Those of you, meaning you're not going to vote either way. You're confused. You don't know what's happening.
Oh, see, look, one.
Okay. Those of you who don't believe that there is a conspiracy from the highest seats of government, can I see your hands? Those of you who do believe there is a conspiracy from the highest seat of government, can I see your hands? Okay, that's the large majority. That's 90-odd% in here. 99%. Yeah, 99%. Well, 98, because there was an abstention and there was, yeah. So if that is the case, you're ready now to do something about it. Can't hear you, sorry.
Yes. You should take that poll.
Who's ready to do something about it? Can I see your hand?
Physically.
And I know we all have been doing our own little thing. But one of the questions that we have to ask today is, what have we been doing regarding solving this problem? And is it enough? Is it enough? If it's not enough, then we need to do more. And if it's not enough, can I ask you a question? Do you believe the solution to the problem is above our pay grade? Who believes it is? Can I see your hands? Who believes we can fix this if we come together in unity? Can I see your hands? Excellent. So now look, what we need then is a program. Would you say? Yes. We need a program. And a program doesn't mean we're going to leave here and solve the problem tomorrow. It means we're going to have to agree on some long-term objectives and then come back on a regular basis to determine how close we are to the goals that we have set for ourselves. Yeah? Do you believe, as some of the panelists have mentioned earlier, owning or building or purchasing our own school is one of the first things we have to do? That's only 2 hands. Can I see your hands? If we had a goal of raising something like £1 million, would you see that as a sum that's too large for us as black people to raise to get the first pilot school up and running? Can't hear you, sorry. Would you be willing to make sacrifices in order to see a school purchased in the community where our children are taught by their own kind? Who's willing to do that? Can I see your hands? Okay. Now, in the Nation of Islam, we had a school for 18 years called New Mind Preparatory. 18 years, full-time school. And we passed all the Ofsted requirements, etc., etc. So we know it can be done. We had that school in Angeltown Estate. We weren't going to go to Knightsbridge and Chelsea because our children are not there. Our children are on Angeltown Estate and all the various estates, right? Now, we moved that school to Ellison Road in Streatham, where we bought a building in Streatham, but the council would not give us the change of use from the house to a school building. So we had to move back to Angeltown Estate. The reason why I'm referencing all of this is to show you not just that it can be done, we've done it. We've done it. We've shown that it can be done. But this time around, it can't be the Nation of Islam school. It has to be the black community school. Can I get a witness? Yes. Can I get a witness? Yes. And we've got to be of the mind that if we're going to fund the school, we also have got to fund the teachers' salaries. Because too much do we, drop our children off to Saturday school, and the teachers are changed over and over again because you can only work for free for so long on a Saturday. My brother Minka's school has been going for a long time and they've been very consistent. So let's give Africa Bantu a big round of applause. Big round of applause. But my point is this. If we are going to attract the brightest and the best, because we can't just have black school for the sake of black school. When we use the word black, it should be synonymous with excellence. Yes? If it's not excellent, it's not black. It's in a black jar, but the component or the internals is not reflective. So black is synonymous with what? Excellent. Can't hear you, sorry. Excellent. And if we're going to acquire our excellent teachers and the best brains in the black community, they already probably have assets and investments that they need to maintain, which means there's a minimum amount they will go and work for. True? So that means our contributions will have to be consistent because we're going to have to pay for the teachers. And then if we're not going to turn our school into an elite-only school, then the fees have got to be very low. Can't hear you, sorry. Still not hearing you. So we have to think through what it actually means to own our own school. It's going to mean commitment for the next 10 years. You ready for that? But look at the rewards of being able to bring now your grandchildren, some of you, to a school that we started as a result of our protest against the government, which we agreed, their plans to incarcerate our children, which we agreed is not going to happen anymore. That's a solution we can leave this place with. Now, the question is, who are you going to trust with your money? Is that a real question? So what I'm going to ask everybody to do is, because we're running out of time, we're going to have to come back to discuss how we're going to structure the building fund for a school for ourselves. Am I losing you? Because some of us, who can pledge £100 a month? Can I see your hands? I can pledge £100 a month. Who can pledge £50 a month?
Apologies for my lateness.
That's all right, brother. This is our brother Fez. Let's give him a big round of applause. He's been taking knives from our brothers and sisters, you know, and he's just a beautiful brother. Let's give him another big round of applause. So you can come anytime. We're honored to be in your presence.
Respect to you, though, man.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. You didn't bring them dogs with you, though, did you?
Yeah, my dog's in your pastor's car right now. Real talk, he's in the boot.
That's good. That's nice. Yes, sir. But look, just very quickly. We all liked to hear that we can do this. But when it comes to putting the money on the table, I noticed the hands didn't go up. Okay. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let's start with 10 a month. Can I see the £10 hands? I'm going up in tens, yeah? 20 pound hands? The £30 hands. Because remember, it's for 10 years. Everybody all right? Now, what you quoted 1970 what? You quoted from the European.
Yeah, it was put in place 1998.
1998. Okay.
But the reports have been criminalising us since the 1970s.
Says they've been criminalising us from the 1970s. They've got a 49-year head start. Yeah? So if we're going to reverse what's in place, can it be done over a year? See, don't you think our problem is that we plan too short term? So we need a 10-year plan, right? So we're up to £30. Who can do £30 a month for 10 years? 40, 50, 60. What'd you say? Say that again? You can't. So you do it until you pass.
Until you get it.
And then you leave us in your will. That's how that's done. That's how that's done, brother. You will the rest of the money. All right. We had a brother who was in the Nation of Islam. He passed, and he had life insurance. And he willed money to our school, even though he passed. Brother David Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him. But that is born, I'm going to come to you. That is born out of love. And knowing, yes, that our mortality is very limited. But the cause of freeing our young people from this pipeline to prison goes on. Yes? And it goes on until we break it. And we've got to break it. Now, who's at £50 a month? Can I see your hands? I'm going to go up to 100. 60.
Minister, no pressure, but I'm going to do £100 a month, innit? Like, no pressure to you lot. Do your thing. But from Faz Amnesty to you lot, it's that, innit?
Give him a big round of applause. See? Who can do 90?
No, go back to 50 for that.
Go back to 50. Yeah, thank you, bro.
As I said,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. So 60,
But
70.
Minister, when I check it, I swear we got a 30 there. So we ain't supposed to be there right now. So did someone say 30 right now? They're going to do 30?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, cool. 40. That's where we're at, Minister.
40.
That's where we're at.
40.
That's £10 a week.
Yeah.
Cool. But these times, but you make your month, innit? Like,
Yeah.
You
See,
know what I'm saying, bro? 2 days in or 2 days.
Yeah, what's the key, brother, is what I want us to do. Because as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And sometimes we're all going to have bad months. We're all going to have issues and incidents that come up. But whatever you lose on the bend, you pick it up on the straight. You know what I'm saying? Because once it's in your heart to do, you're not allowing anything to be an obstacle in your path, because obstacles will appear. But our job is to assess the obstacle and then plan to meet it and overcome it. Yes? But whatever we love, we will fight for, kill for, and be willing to die for. And I don't see any better thing to give our lives for today than the freedom of our babies. If we know that the government is trying to incarcerate them and kill them, we have to fight for them. Yeah? So brothers and sisters, on your way out, and this is on you, Fez said it right, no pressure. If you wanted to just come and be inspired and now you're done with it, you're going to go back to doing what you're doing, no pressure. Thank you for coming and adding to the heat of the room, making it more uncomfortable for those of us who are serious. But if you're serious, coming to you, Fez, if you're serious, on the way out, we want you to take the time out and put your name down and your email address and telephone number so that we can call you back to a serious meeting with those who want to make it happen. Because anybody who's going to be on the board, who's going to be handling money, they've got to give a pledge that they will give their life. And if they steal our money, well, they can't steal our money. Nowadays, because we have these lawyers, we have barristers and solicitors. Straight up. No. What I'm saying to you is, because we have lawyers, the structure that we have to protect our money is such that no one person or two persons or three persons can steal the money. Are you following me? We're so sophisticated nowadays, we can put systems in place where no one can't steal the money. And that's what we need to do going forward. We don't need to trust anybody. We trust the system, yes, that we're going to put in place. So, are you up for that? Yes. Can't hear you. Yes. Those who are up for it, let me see your hands if you're going to do something every month for 10 years. At least have the intention. You're giving me the crocodile hand. You know, a little short half hand?
Hey, big man.
I don't want the crocodile hand. I want the full hand. Commitment. Yes? Okay. Thank you. Brother Fez?
Yeah, I was going to just say, yeah, just for a little bit of compromisation, yeah? Like, imagine, like, I want people to understand, I don't know because it's your thing, then you're setting up in a certain way. But just, like, personally, like, maybe you can't commit every month, innit? And maybe you want to come back in 3 months and try and commit, do you understand? But don't feel pressurized, you understand that? Because it ain't always got to be a financial contribution, well, in my opinion, you understand? If it means coming and giving your time or doing something, coming to the bike park or whatever, the minister's got to set up little events, run a stall or something, that's a part of a contribution too, you understand?
That's right.
Little contributions make big ones, yeah.
That's
so
right.
It's not a money thing.
That's
like that,
right.
You get me?
Yeah. Yeah. And we definitely need the money. But all of the, definitely need the money. Like, we definitely need the money.
We need the money.
Definitely need the money. Like, I'm not going to allow you to even start relaxing your mind on that. Because I was with you until you got to that part. We definitely need the dough, okay? Definitely need the dough. Because this is what I have in mind. This is what I have in mind. And follow me. Follow me. This is what I have in mind. I think our approach to has to be three-pronged, Brother Minka. May I talk to? It has to be three-pronged. We have to set up a school here as a pilot, first and foremost, in England. And I honestly believe we have to set one up in the Caribbean too. And my place of choice is Jamaica. Obviously. Orlando, may I come to you? That's the starting point. So we get to solution. We'll get there. We will get there. But and to Trinidad, we'll get there. But because Jamaica is such an important country in the Caribbean, if we lose Jamaica, we lose the whole Caribbean. When Jamaica's strong, the Caribbean's strong. When Jamaica's weak, the Caribbean is weak. And in Africa, we also have to build one in Africa, either in Ghana or in Nigeria. Who said Nigeria? Who said Nigeria?
Yes, man.
Who says Ghana? Can I see your hands for Mama Ghana?
Yeah,
Ghana's representing in the house.
Ghana's a bit
Ghana's
calmer.
representing in the house.
I do
And if we put in a call to Fuse ODG, it's done. Yeah? Because Fuse is our good friend and he will definitely endorse this. And he's the ambassador of tourism now. So,
nice.
In order for us, I believe, Sister Cheryl, brothers and sisters on the panel, to give our children a proper balanced education, they're going to need to visit the Caribbean and Africa every year.
Absolutely.
As a part of their educational curriculum. Are you following me? They need to know the price that's been paid for them to be here. And too many of our babies, we have not properly educated them in regards to the struggle of black people, that they know what their ancestors have gone through in order for them to be here. If they were connected to the struggle of us as black people, they would stop killing each other overnight. So you and I have not just failed them by way of a general education. No. The first education they should receive is a knowledge of themselves. And then they go to school. But if you send them to school without a proper thorough knowledge of self, then you're sending a sheep to the slaughter. So you and I, first and foremost, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan in 1995 called for 1 million men to assemble in Washington, D.C. for the purpose of atoning for not being responsible. And I believe we in this country need a day of atonement. Because particularly us as black men, we have not done right via our families. And if we did what we should do as the vanguard of our families, there's no way would we allow what's taking place to happen. We just wouldn't allow it. But the mere fact that it's happening, then it shows that we have lost the plot as black men. Can I get an amen? Any A2s? Remember, she said amen. Not a woman, amen. So brothers, are we going to stand up and take responsibility? Yes, yes. Can't hear you. Yes. Can't hear you. Yes. So don't you think we need to atone? Yes. Don't you think we need to atone? Yes. I mean, in this country here, we want for October this year, the 16th, the 22nd anniversary of the Million Man March, the 22nd anniversary of the Million Man March, for us to observe it here in the United Kingdom. What do you think? Brothers and sisters. What do you think? And I will ask the Honourable Minister Louis Farrakhan if he will send a message directly to us in the United Kingdom. How about that? I can't hear you, sorry. Do you want me to do that? So let us take responsibility, brothers and sisters, and let us accept that we have first failed our children and we've handed them over to their former slave masters and their children and members of our own community who have sold out to these people for a paycheck. And let us now reclaim what's ours. Yeah? Last few questions and we're gonna wrap up. Brother, then sister.
Yeah.
He will talk.
I don't mind. If you haven't got any questions, I'm happy
Sure.
to answer. So when everyone's like, when you're not ready, let me know.
Quickly, just these last questions, then we've got to close. We've got 5 minutes. Brother's had his hand up. Let brother.
Yeah. Evening.
Evening, sir.
Brothers and sisters. Just obviously the main solution, talking about owning our own schools.
Yes.
Most of us, we pay council tax and national insurance.
Sure.
This national insurance funds our school, the public school. So whilst we're giving over our money to make our own school, which I think is great, we're also paying for schools then that we're not going to be sending our children to.
Sure.
My question is, should there be an approach to change the systems, the structures, the attitudes of public schools? Or should we just forget that and just focus on our own schools? Should we be doing both? What's your views on that?
Well, to be very quickly, I think we first and foremost must do for self first. And secondly, when we come together, brother, to discuss where we're going to purchase the school, what type of building we're going to acquire. Some of us might say we need it out of London. And then we might decide that we want to move out of London and buy up all the homes in a particular town that we can call Blacktown. Seriously. Like, in the United Kingdom, there's very few black communities left. And we might need to go and buy a village. No? That's ours. Because I want to live beside you. Do you want to live beside me? Can't hear you, sorry. Yes. Don't you notice when Caucasian people come into an area, they take it over? Brixton is not ours anymore. Can I get a witness? Because we can't say we haven't had anything. We've had everything, but what have we allowed? Someone to come and take it away. And when they come into an area, they take over the schools. Haven't you noticed? So come on, we've got to learn from them, and we've got to do the same. Because when 50 of us move into an area, guess what they will do? Can't hear you, sir. Move out.
Move out.
So let us plan strategically. So I don't want to answer that question directly, because there are some fights, brother, not worth having. Because the gain is not worth the energy you put into it. So we will consider it in a council setting to see whether that is something we should do en masse, or whether just pulling out is the most important thing. Sure. Sure. And as Brother Hakeem just said, that's where political lobbying comes into it. It's a long-range program, and we'll definitely consider that. It will cost millions to change the law. Exactly. Exactly. Sister.
Thank you. Firstly, I want to thank the entire panel.
Okay, I didn't see you, sis. Because there's another 50 hands behind you. So I'm coming to sister and I'm coming to you. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. And Sister Francesca, that's 6, and that's it. Okay? So, sister, please.
Thank you. And firstly, I just wanted to thank the entire panel for all of the research and information that has been presented to make it absolutely clear to every one of us in the House that the education system, clearly doesn't have the interest of our children at heart. And I thought the starting point, the solution starting point was excellent. And the reason why I had my hand up from very early on as well was following on from the solutions, I wanted to suggest that we then look at the how. Yeah, because from the solutions, and each of the panel members made excellent suggestions about what needed to happen, but then it's about moving it from what needs to happen to how it happens, what steps need to be taken in order to realize some of those suggestions. But if I could just go to my sister here, because you mentioned that a relative of yours actually runs a PRU. I think the idea of us looking into how we could potentially take over the running of PRUs and then identify individuals who could come together as collectives to run those PRUs should be part of a plan or a strategy as well.
So, sister, you want to respond real quick?
The point is we can achieve anything with unity. So we need to have a sensible, realistic, but constructive approach. We can't just say we're going to take over a PRU. We need to have lawyers, politicians on board, local authority on board, the school on board, and we need to go to them and say, this is the teacher, and we need to go with a proposal backed by our communities, because the reality is there is lots, and I'm talking tens and tens of millions of pounds available. We just need to be very clever about how we get it. So we need to start with ourselves first. So it is possible, but it's part of the plan that Brother Hakeem is speaking about. It's part of the plan of just getting ourselves together. And this is a beautiful start, just a little bit of a contribution.
Thank you, sis. So who was next in line? My sister. And then yourself.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I'm really encouraged by coming here. I don't usually attend things like this. I'm a primary teacher. I've been in teaching over 20 years. So listening to everything that's been said, I also have 2 young black boys. I also am a single parent, so I know all about the struggles that we're going through. And I think it's so important that we all continue to do the very best that we are doing. But the curriculum is one of the ways that we will help these boys. We have to know what they have to learn, and we have to support them.
Right.
And until we do that, it's almost impossible for them to sit in the system,
Right.
because they are not able to access the curriculum, so they kick off, so the teachers have an excuse
Sure.
to get rid of them. or
Sure.
One
exclude
question.
them.
Since
Of course you can ask
your
a question.
profession as a teacher,
Yes.
and you're concerned about the curriculum of what they've been taught now.
Yes.
Now that new law that's going to be that's just been released about 4 to 5-year-olds should be learning about same-sex. So there's been a law that's just been released about children should be taught same-sex education at the age of 4 or 5. Listen to me. I don't ever want you telling my daughter about using the toilet at 16. That's my job, bruv. So, would you? So, sorry, no, not you. I'm so sorry. When I'm talking, I get a bit. I'm talking in general, but I want to say, what's your opinion on that being introduced on a proper?
I actually think it is the role of the parent. As parents,
Thank
it is our duty. I think we have failed them tremendously in our community.
Because
so it's up to us to teach
personally,
our
I don't
kids.
want my child thinking like about their sexuality at the age of 4
Right,
and
so
5.
you as a parent need to go to
Yeah,
the
do you know what I'm saying?
school
No,
and
I
have
told them
that
already.
dialogue.
No, I
Don't
told them.
go down there. Listen,
No,
fam. I don't want to talk
There's
down
no
there.
dialogue.
Okay, hold on. Let me just intervene.
That's really rude. That's really rude. But I've just made it very clear to my teachers that I don't want it to happen. And if it does happen, all my children will spontaneously be sick on that day, innit?
Yeah,
And they're
exactly.
going to have diarrhea for 48 hours, innit?
Exactly.
It's not a problem.
Fez, that's actually been happening. Like 80% of children have been withdrawn from schools across the country for those
The reason I
lessons.
wanted to speak to her about is this lady here is because she of her profession. So I just wanted the opinion from her fact. But me as a parent and her as someone who's a profession and she's speaking about curriculum, I just wanted to know her base in that.
What we're going to do, we're going to table that though, because it's a different conversation, and we'll pick it up. Maybe at the end, you and Fez can have that conversation, okay? Yeah, let's have that conversation. Sister, please.
I was listening. Sorry, Hakim.
Yes,
Brother
ma'am.
Hakim.
Yes, ma'am.
And when you mentioned about behavior, and you mentioned the word behavior several times, my
Mhm.
concern is the numbers of black children, especially boys, that have been diagnosed with so-called ADHD.
Mhm.
I say parents should go and get a second opinion because often it is not true.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
to look at diet.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. But I am a great advocator, and advocate. Yeah, that's what I said, right? Advocate of withdrawal. I've had enough. I think the only way for us to progress is to separate. If me and you can't live in the same house, then we got to separate.
Straight.
Yeah? I think that's where we are. If you don't want to continue to try and see if it works with these people, then help yourself.
Yeah, man,
I'm done. I've been done a while, but I'm super done now. Are you done? Can't hear you. You lot done? Okay, so let's finish these questions real quick.
Right, good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to go back to what you were talking about. I don't know if I'm making much sound. About having our own school.
Sure.
Now, obviously, I support that 100%. Now, what I'd like to know from you is whether you foresee, when this school is opened, are you still bound by the rules of the Department of Education in Ofsted? Because if you are going to be bound by that, to be quite frank, I don't want anything to do with it. I have taken my school out of DFE control and out of Ofsted control, and I've told them to keep their registration number. I will not be bound by people who have got no morals and will come trotting down my path to tell me what to do.
Sure.
So we have to be abundantly clear
Clap for this
on
lady.
that.
That's big right there. you know.
Well, sis,
I didn't even know you can do that.
Yeah, we
And
had
get
a
away
school
with
for 18 years, and we weren't bound by their madness.
Well, that's what the Jewish people must do then.
Yeah, we weren't bound by their madness.
Okay.
And come on, we're not going to be.
Thank you for that information.
To be quite honest with you, if you actually know me, you would know the answer to that question. I have a perfect hatred for their madness. It's not a dislike, it's a perfect hatred. So you don't have to convince me I am on board. You following me? I was born to oppose them.
Well, yes, I think.
Are you hearing me?
Going on with the
I don't have a compliant bone in my body.
We say it.
To their madness.
You destroy the oppressors, man.
Huh?
You destroy the oppressors.
Please.
Right,
Like,
yeah,
I was born for it. So all of that to say, the more you get to know me and some of us up here, some of these brothers and sisters up here, they live for this. And they didn't just join this struggle. We have been doing this, for over 30 odd years. We've been trying to do this right longer than we were doing it wrong. Our adolescence lasted 3, 4, 5 years. Well, that's nothing in comparison to 35 years now of unadulterated service to your people. And we served with no money at all. We decided we were going to have a school, so have a school we did. Simple, with no money. We lived in council flats at the time. So it made no difference to us. We pooled our resources, started first with the Saturday, then went full time. And I tell you what really was the main impetus, because we were in planning for months. Everybody meeting. And one day my brother said to me, why don't you stop talking and get it done? And just saying that meant the day we were having the meeting, we agreed in that meeting, let's start next week Saturday. It took 7 days. And then we made it happen. And 18 years later, the rest is history. Yes? And so we've done this. But part 2 will be sweeter than part 1. Because we want one in Kingston, Jamaica. And we also want, not necessarily Kingston, but we also want, but in Jamaica. But we also, now when I say, the reason why I'm a bit shy of Kingston, because I don't know if a city is the best place to have the school. It's better we have land where our children are free. But everything we're doing is flagship. We're not dealing with no substandard, nothing. It's of the highest quality with the best minds. That's why our school was named New Mind. Because we're not dealing with substandard. And we're not trying to follow a substandard system. Yes? And as I think Brother Hakim said it, when our parents came from the Caribbean and Africa, they came civilized. And we are the first now, second generation of people who have been educated in this country. So wherever we are, we're made in England. That's the label in the back of our brain. Made in England. So when they're condemning us, they're condemning their educational system. Because that's what it produces for black people. It produces a dysfunctional product. In the Caribbean and Africa, they don't have a problem with expulsion in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Jamaica, throughout the Caribbean. No expulsion. No, not expulsion. So we have to be a satellite because we are an independent nation. See, we got to stop thinking of ourselves as community. We are the black nation in England. Are you hearing me? Did I say the black nation in England? So let's start thinking more as a nation as opposed to a community. Yeah? All right. So with that said, sis, it's a muted point. We're going all out. Because if this man wanted to solve the problem in the schools that are failing, he would send the teachers from Eton, from Winchester, from St. Paul's, and the same textbooks they use there, they would employ them in the schools where our children are failing. Why have they got a Bible in Eton College valued at over £1 million and my one costs $12.99? What's the difference? Why do they have to learn Latin still in those schools? Because original texts are in those languages. Yeah, so let's accept that we're behind, but we're going to catch up fast. Yes? Okay. So it was the next person? Sister, you can't double dip, unfortunately. Sister. And then Francesca. You can't double dip, I'm sorry. There's too many people here.
Thank you. I wanted to come back to your point. Right at the beginning, you spoke about an education system that wasn't suited for boys generally, but specifically for black boys. And we understand that there's a feminization of the education system, so it is difficult for boys to operate within that, particularly those that are at the far end of their gender, which we see through behaviours that are commonly called ADHD, ADD. And so there's something different required for our young men. But I also want to speak on your point around behaviour and your point around the behaviour policy. Now, this whole issue around exclusions, for children who are being excluded from school, it's normally a graduated process. And for parents, what we need to be aware of is that the behaviour policy that your child is subject to, if you have a young man that is likely to contravene the behaviour policy, and you know what his behaviour is like, be aware of what that policy says. Understand how it graduates towards permanent exclusion. Because more often than not, they will have 3 stages to them. So when your child has hit that first fixed term exclusion, you're up the school. You must be aware of when they're graduating to that last exclusion where they're then railroaded to the PRU and onto jail.
And then unit.
So you can intervene at those points. Be a parent with a big mouth and sharp elbows. Nobody's going to care more than you in those meetings about your child. Don't expect them to. They will not. I have the benefit of representing black parents and white parents in the same arena, the same geographical area. So I'm meeting with the same parents, the same teaching staff, and seeing the different behaviors of those staff as how they receive my client. So whilst there is a feeling that there is a institutional racism with education, I see it because I'm representing different parents who are received differently by the school. The chances that white young men are given, our boys are not given. And I can see because I witness it myself. So I wanted to just say, with regard to the behaviour policy, very often teachers are not aware of its contents because they're not supposed to be written by teachers, they're written by the governors. Governors are the strategic arm of the school. Teachers are the operational arm. The buck stops with your governors. So the policy that the teachers may be contravening because they are not following it, you then have redress with the governors. And so you must be able to point to where they have not adhered to their own policy, which is based on the national legislation. You must be aware of the policies. That is your agreement with the school. You agree as a parent to abide by the rules, and the school agrees to apply the policy in a fair and equitable manner. And that's how you check them on those points. Be very, very aware of what they can and cannot do to your child before it happens. That would be my advice.
Thank you, sister. Thank you. Last question, Sister Francesca. What is it, sister? Okay.
Right, greetings, family.
Greetings.
Great. I just want to say a few points that have been put forward. Just one in regards to children with special education needs. I'm actually an education psychologist, been over for 25 years now, and also a teacher prior to that as well. But one of the things in regards that you spoken about in regards to children with special educational needs is that, the child can actually be excluded from a school solely on their special educational needs. So that's one thing, parents should go back to the school and actually appeal that if that ever is the case. The other thing, in all the 25 years as being an education psychologist, I've only really seen one child who would so-called fit that criteria, and still, when he was sitting down with me, he still was able to talk with him, even though able to talk with him, able to engage with him, and I thought he was actually a very lovely person. So, all these things in regards to these different labels that children have, it really need to go back. And as someone said, get second opinions about this, really do. Because a lot of the children, yes, some do, particularly those who end up in PRUs, definitely have learning needs, and they've been unidentified. And that needs to be addressed in regards to that. And as parents, it's so important that you go away, that we go away, and actually, as I said before, really get second opinions. But the other thing as well is that my children, and I help very much to start up at, in our school, the New Mind School. And my children have actually been blessed, to go to these so-called private schools, the best of the best of the best of the best. Believe me, where even the children, the Queen's children have been. but they will tell you themselves the best school that they ever went to, even though they've gone to the best of the best that money can provide, because obviously me and my husband work hard to get them there, but they will say that New Mind School was the best school they ever went to.
Absolutely.
Even though they've got the farm on that school, they're overlooking the sea, they've bottled their own water at the school, but the best school that they ever went to was New Mind School, which they had hardly any pencil, they had hardly any playground, but the best, they will tell you themselves, was New Mind School. Because every day you met parents who you really could engage with, and you know they're from your community, or whatever you want to call it, nation. And that's, you can't pay for that. Cannot pay for that. So when Brother Minister Abdul Hakeem says the school, that what we need, that is it. There is nothing else. That is the solution. Thank you for all the other solutions, which are fantastic as well. And they, you know, really must adhere to them. But I took my time out, and I, you know, very well paid if you really want to know. But the thing is, I took my time out, and I stopped all that, and I helped in that school. Because I wanted my children to, I planned for them to be in a school that is ours.
That's right.
Ours.
It's ours, that's right.
That's what we need.
That's
right. That is it.
Thank you, Sister Francesca. Thank you.
And brothers.
So just very quickly as we close, thank you. Give yourself a big round of applause for your patience and your wonderful questions and representation. Two things. And I want you to really go home and think about what we discussed and what we agreed we were going to do in funding an alternative to what is out there that is not even worth considering. Because I really want us to relieve ourselves of the stress by just withdrawing. And when you withdraw, like, so much stress just leaves you. When you know something is not properly representative of you, just leave it and go and do the right thing. One of the things we need to learn to do, just take this home with you. We have to learn how to fight. Sometimes you can think you're tough and you think you can fight, but there's an art to proper fighting. When you're in school, you know, the biggest, the toughest and whatnot can roll you over. But at a certain age and you start learning certain arts, those people can't roll you over anymore. Because you've learned the art of snapping their necks. Are you with me? Yes. Everybody all right? It's very true. You could be a great boxer, but if you can't grapple and somebody gets you on the ground, they'll hurt you. Just like you saw with what Khabib did with McGregor, right? McGregor had a lot of mouth, didn't he? But Khabib, he grew up fighting bears. Different kind of man. Them men there who driving Uber like Khabib, give them their money. Don't. You understand? It's not everybody you must argue with. But anyway, so let us understand that there's a special methodology, special method and a special art to extricating ourselves from this system and actually surviving to tell the tale. Because their objective is, if you try to get away from us, we're coming after you to destroy you. So we have to extract ourselves in a way that we can maintain our lives. Very important. Because one alive black man and woman, because all it takes is one. If there's one person who's willing to stand up, you can turn the whole group around.
Mark that.
And their objective is to have none among us. And that's why when Akala was on the Good Morning show, he shook the whole country with just being articulate and knowing the facts. He had arrogant Piers Morgan saying, I agree. That man don't agree with nothing because he's arrogant and he thinks he knows everything. But Akala came fully equipped and rolled them all over. So much so. Now this is the kicker. So much so that if you look in those white women's faces, they were melting at the black man. And that's why them environments are dangerous for the black man. And he has to go in there with his queen. Forget about Piers Morgan. Watch it again and look at those white women's faces. The look on their face was, I want one of those. Real talk. So all of that to say thank you, everybody. And those of you who now Fez is enjoying himself. He's cool. He's cool. Don't worry about Fez. You got an advocate over here, Fez. There's a Fez corner here. But sisters like determined. But where are you from, Fez? So
it's real talk.
no, he's our man. That's why he's here. So Fez, we're not gonna get through the evening unless you share some words with.
I'm down. I said I'm down. Talk anything.
You hear that? Them same dog.
What do you want to say, Sheila? What do you know?
Criminality, what's going on with life, what you see on the streets, the solution, what you think the solutions are. I actually came to hear you.
Oh, so I'm sorry. Hey, sister, love for that, man. But you listening? My solution?
Yes.
Oh, see, that's what we did over there. Yeah, it's crazy, innit? It's like we're surrounded in poverty around here, innit? Like there's youths living in the yards. They can't, like they're watching their mum struggle with no electric and them thing there. You get me? It's that real, innit? I've been through that. Like mumsy's in the yard. She never had cigarettes or she ain't got no peas till her monthly money comes in. My sisters are younger. Brother, you mad? Man's trapping, bruv. I've got to make that paper. Like I've got youths. When people is thinking about GCSEs, man is thinking about SMA. My child's mother's walking into my GCSE exam behind me at the age of 15. You know what I'm saying? So when a lot of these kids 15 years ago were being kids, I had to be a dad. Like all my children, innit? Like straight up and down, I've got 9 children. Oh, my oldest is, it's real, it's real-ish. My oldest is 17. 5 boys, 4 girls. My youngest, they're gonna be 2 next month. But none of my children in trouble, please. They're doing A-levels, they're overachieving. But what it is, yeah, when I grew up, like, I can't remember my dad telling me I love you and cuddling me, you get me? But my son's 17, and every time I chat to him, I tell him I love you. And he tells me back, there's nothing wrong with telling your kid that, you understand? As I said, like, they need love and guidance, bro. Like, they need to be told, yeah, like, when I used to run for England, and I was winning competitions, and I'm in front of a crowd of flipping 10,000 people cheering about what I've done. And you go home and it's just like, I won, mum, I won, dad. And it's just like, yeah. You're like, what? That's a mad thing. All my friends love me for this. When I go to the stage, they will cheer for me. Like, you're a kid, you're gonna want that. Listen, you see my dog, he's a baby, he's a puppy, but if he sits down and he does the right thing, yeah, I reward him for it, innit? Bruv, how can you treat kids any less than that? Do you know what I'm saying, bruv? These kids here, what people don't understand here is that when you're a baby, you get looked after, you get looked after. Nothing's at need, innit? You're nurtured, you're loved. You get to the age of 13, 14, 15, year 7, bang, go to school by yourself. Now that's the maddest parts of these youths' lives, you understand? Mummy's at work till 6 o'clock. Guess what? School finishes at 3 o'clock, you know? You know, there's a mad window where all the madness happens, you know? Mummy's gonna come home and see a message on her phone from the police saying your son just got bagged at the top of green. But that 3-hour window from 3:30 up to 6 o'clock, mummy don't even know where you are, you know. And when mummy leaves work, she's leaving at rush hour, you know. So by the time mummy gets home, it's 7 o'clock, you know. And guess what? Son's in the police station already, you know. No appropriate adult. It's crazy. Who knows what you done? But I'm just saying, yeah, you need to be more in touch with youths. Like the other day, my baby girl, yeah, Hermione, she's 16. She tried to my phone got locked off, my Apple iPad and all that. So she's got that. There's only a couple numbers I know off my heart. You get me? I can't really waste brain space on certain things. So I know my youths. No, it's real, that, innit? No, it's real. So I know my youths' numbers, innit? Because it's that. And I phoned her the other day. I was like, baby girl, daddy's phone's off, like, and I've lost my Apple ID pad and I can't get into my phone. All my numbers are gone. I was like, I need your brother's number. And she's like, I ain't going, dad. But she was heavily interacted into her household, innit? Like, everyone's talking to her, but I needed her to listen to me at that time. So I'm like, daughter, like, listen, yeah, I need the number, innit? Like, get on your Snapchat and get the number. But I know they're active in their Snapchat, but I can see them tweeting in their Snapchat, you get me? Them not living their Snapchat. I pay your bills, I see everything, like, come and be real. But now, I'm gonna need it, I'm on the roadside, I've got no numbers. Daughter, go on Snapchat and get your brother here. So I got a bit rumpy. I don't argue with my kids, I never hit my kids. And I heard her say to her sister, like, her name's Hermione and her sister name's Tamani. She said, Tamani, come and speak to your dad. I looked at the phone like, whoa. I was like, listen to you. I said, get your mum. I said, tell your daughter, when she decides I'm her dad again, she can get her trainers that she wants again, even though she clapped £50 for the day before. And she's not allowed that after 10 o'clock. She's not grounded, but all that little going to your boyfriend's house and all that, she's never stayed at her house, you know. My daughter's never stayed out of her house, only my house or her mum's, and she's 16. But I told her now, you see, 10 o'clock, I said, baby mum, 10 o'clock, yeah, in the yard. That's it, I don't hear. It's not even an argument. And when she decides I'm my dad again, she will get some money, and then I will reevaluate her social life. But it took like 40 hours. So she phoned me back. I see a missed call from her. But I was busy, so I phoned her back. I said, baby girl, what's up? Hi, dad. Hi, daughter. What's up, baby girl? Dad, I just want to apologize. But straight away now, because she submitted, that's all I wanted. So I said to her, baby girl, you done now. I want to apologize to you too. But it goes both ways. I need to show her respect now. Baby girl, I want to apologize to you if I offended you, but I was in a bad moment, baby girl. And love and respect, forget about that. What are you saying to me? All right, dad, love you too. It's been cool ever since. Do you understand? Don't get it twisted. Nothing getting pretty around there. Like, I've got a 14-year-old son, bro, that thinks he's my dad. You get me? Like, my man wants a £400 bike, and I'm telling him no. But man thinks he can't chat to me. But you know what, bro? I'm not going to beat you. You don't live in my household. But I'm going to tell your mum to let you understand that's not the way to conduct yourself. And when you feel like you want to conduct yourself in a certain way, then we will be able to talk to each other. But your brother is 17 years old and he tells me he loves me. So there's clearly a different problem. Not that I would just walk away from him, but now I have to find other ways to get through to my son because he's more emotional than the other one. You get me? Sure. And it's not because he don't like me. It's because he even loves me more than the other one does. But he just finds it hard to express himself. You get me? And I understand that. But it don't mean I've got to be like, you're my son, come here, chat to me, because bruv, he's a man, he's growing. My son's taller than me, he's 14, he's taller than me. My other son's bigger than me, like they're way more than me right now. Like bruv, there's levels, do you know what I'm saying? Like my dad used to fist me up, bruv, on a serious level, bruv. Like real talk, bruv. Then man come in the yard, man's quiet, you better know what time it is. Like even to this day here, like me and my dad don't get along. But blood, I have to respect my dad, innit? He's my dad, you get me? And when I tell you, blood, right now my dad's all 65, yeah, but he still jogs 5 miles a day and he flings some licks under my rash, you get me?
All right, on that note, Fez, I'm going to thank you and appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we're just going to end in an orderly fashion. Thank you. So don't leave yet. Just make some announcements, please. We want to thank all the panelists. Give them a big round of applause, brothers and sisters. And we also want to thank the Community Ministry of Justice. Let's give the Community Ministry of Justice a big hand. And we want to thank Lightning Radio FM, Galaxy Radio, Flames FM. Brother Shahid, you here? Let's give Shahid a big round of applause from Flames. And all of you who attended, all viewed via webcast. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget to leave your details at the back and we'll be in touch with you for a mastermind meeting to discuss how we're going to achieve this score. Okay? Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Man's got a lot of shit going on. Man's got a lot going on Sunday. You log in, yeah, you're done now. Man's out.